My guest today earned 2 Purple Hearts as an Army sniper, then came home, got thrown away by the military, went to prison, beat addiction, and is now fighting terminal liver failure from an illness he contracted while serving his country. His name is Cody Boden, and this is what America did to one of its own.
So I grew up down in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's not a real big town, but it's the biggest town on the western side of the state. And I was born there, and I came back when I was in high school. So we moved around, and I got a taste of living in Arkansas, a taste of living in Wyoming. But I really spent, my high school years in Colorado, and then that's where I went from there, and I joined the Army.
Why do you guys move around a lot?
My grandfather owned coal mines, so we had a coal mine that was we had coal mines in Colorado, and my grandma lived in Grand Junction, so we always kind of stayed around central to her. And then when my grandpa opened a mine in Rock Springs, Wyoming, we went up there. It was a mine called Lion Coal. And I used to run around the mine with my grandpa. I crashed his 2-story loader into the side of the building, but he owns the thing, so you can't really get mad at the boss. And he was an old school Italian guy. Okay. I don't even think he graduated, or he didn't. I know he didn't graduate, but I don't even think he made it out of middle school. But engineers would call this man for knowledge. It was just beyond me how smart this man was. But he opened a mine in Rock Springs. We went up there, and then when he went to open another mine in Fort Smith, Arkansas, or south of it, we moved down there with him, which that's a culture shock. I'm not necessarily white, so I'm Native American, and I'm white, a mix of white, so I'm darker. So when I moved down there, it was kind of weird. I fit on the other side of the segregation line, which didn't ever make sense to me because I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm white. But, in down woods, deep woods, Arkansas, people could get pretty disgusting. So I had a different experience living down there, and then moving back to Grand Junction for my high school years. Obviously, it's better to be in a place where you're not hated due to skin color, And it's not like I was that segregated, but it was just strange to me because I wasn't raised that way, never felt that way. And then when I was treated that way, it was kind of off-putting, obviously. But I went back up from the mine in Sugarloaf that was in Arkansas. We never were able to open it. Part of it was my dad being Native American, he was on the company so we could mine across the border into Oklahoma and then take the Indian coal. Well, not take it, but we had rights to it. But that never worked, so we went back to Grand Junction, where my parents, they stayed coal miners, and my grandpa ended up retiring and just staying home from there.
How would your parents have described you as a kid?
Well, my jersey name always said Mouth when I played baseball. It was 00 Mouth. My dad was my coach, and it wasn't the same coach of the coach's son's out there. It was like, Dad, I was good at what I did. I was good at playing baseball and sports. He expected more of me. He expected better of me, and he expected me to be very disciplined. And anytime I slipped on that thing, and I'm a kid, so I'm going to mess up. But he's very strict about it. He would bench me over something ridiculous, and the other parents are like, can you pull your son off the bench? We're losing. This is getting old. But I was a normal kid. I built forts in the woods, and I played in the creeks and ran around until dark and came home. And when I went back to Grand Junction, it was a different environment than Arkansas, obviously. And that's really where a lot of the change in what I seen, because there's a lot of meth in Grand Junction. There's a lot of drugs in Grand Junction. They're everywhere, but it was just different there. It wasn't so, I guess, low key. But, I went through high school. I ended up going to an alternative high school for my last year because I got in an altercation with a bunch of guys. Got in a fight, and my parents were like, no, you're not going to take this from the principal. We'll just put you in alternative school. Where I graduated early, I had a lot more success with that teacher because they understood me in a different kind of way, right? I went to work in the morning, I went to school in the afternoon, and I was fine. But, I graduated early 2004 when I was supposed to graduate later of 2000. Well, I guess technically I graduated 2003 instead of 2004. So I was a little bit ahead, and from there, I mean, that was the change of when I made the decision to go in the Army. Um, and truth is, I had lost my grandpa right when I was turning 17, 8 or 17, turning 18. I was really close to him. I soaked up every bit of knowledge I could from this man. But when I lost him, I was the kid that was dating the 19-year-old sophomore in college, and I was a senior in high school. And, I called Lindsay and I'm like, hey, can I talk to you? And she's like, yeah. I was like, well, my grandpa died, and I was obviously tore up about it. And she's like, oh, that sucks. I'm going out with my girlfriends tonight. That's how we are. Okay. Well, that's about all you are is hot. She was just looks. She didn't care about anything. And at that point, like, it kind of devastated me because I cared more obviously than she did. And I literally, that was the first time in my life I ever really did anything other than, smoking weed or drinking as a kid. And my life really changed at that point because I went to some of my friends that I knew they did drugs at the house. I just never was in the room. Like, they'd be like, close the door, Cody's here. Like, they never even allowed me to see it. They didn't care to bring me into it. But they didn't stop me when I wanted to go try. When I thought that was a good idea.
Now, was the plan for you to work in your family's business, or?
Originally, yeah. Until the Sugarloaf mine fell apart down in Arkansas, like at that point, it took so much money out of the family, took so much out of the family in general to move down there. My mom and dad were the only two that went with my grandpa. So, we kind of chased a dream. It fell apart. And so then when my parents moved back, they went to work at a different mine that my grandpa didn't own. But like, they had great jobs. My parents were making great money when I was growing up. So I didn't need for anything. If I deserved it, I got it. And if I wanted it, I had to work for it. Right. If it was sports equipment, if it was something for school, I sure got it. But, I wasn't spoiled. I didn't have all the extra toys. I mean, when I was 5, I remember my dad taking every toy I owned because I wouldn't pick up, and he made me put them all in trash bags. And he takes the trash bags and he's like, all right, let's put them in the truck. So then, me being a kid, drives me out to the dump, and he makes me throw my toys out. Never did I think about that there was a fire truck that pulled in behind us. Right. So I'm like, you just made me throw all my toys away. I hate you. You're such a bad dad. No, he called the fire department to come pick them all up. So my dad made a ginormous donation of all my toys. I didn't have anything. It didn't matter who bought it for me. It didn't matter if grandma bought it. And that was that special, you can't throw it. Like, I remember had one like when the VOTech computer, like, flip ups first came out, like where you push buttons and it'd say stuff. I mean, phones were still on cords. Like, you had a 30-foot cord through the house to be on the phone. So at that time, that was a big toy. It was expensive or whatever. It got packed up and thrown right in the dump with everything else. So we ended up going back, and when they worked for different people, our family dynamic changed, and especially when my grandpa started to get older and he started to have dementia or Alzheimer's, however you want to describe it. And he had a stroke, and that was what ended up taking him down the path of not being able to come back from, was strokes. And that was the strongest man I knew. That guy could break his leg, literally broke his leg and waited to go to the doctor after work. He was 13 when he stopped going to school because he was tired of getting jumped at the bus stop. He had to or at the bus tracks or the train tracks. He had to cross the train tracks in wherever town he was in. And anytime he went into the rich boys' neighborhood, he got picked on, called, he was full-blown Italian. So, they called him all the names that you can for an Italian. He told me one time, he's like, that's the last time he'll call me a wop. And he's like, I'm not poor either. And so he went to work and never stopped. He provided millions of dollars for so many people. Like, he had a cook in a mine. So you would go down underground, and then when you were halfway through your shift, you came out of the mine and you ate a hot meal. You didn't sit with your lunchbox in a black hole with crap all over you and eat a terrible lunch. So I was raised with a very different perspective on life, like even though you may have something, you need to help other people. You don't just leave somebody out there hung out to dry, and if you do have employees or somebody that you care about, you take care of all of them to the best of your ability. Um, so, like my dad, he was a lot more strict. In 2025, it would definitely be considered abuse. And somewhat traumatizing. I will never treat my kids like that. I hope, and I'm pretty sure I'm safe there. But like, because it impacts you down the road. When you're on that verge with growing up and you're becoming a man, like you have to decide who you are, and then you start to replicate people. So I had two people. I had my grandfather, I had my dad. My dad drank a lot. My dad was a little bit more physical, hands-on, whooped my butt, and a little bit more. When I thought I could be a pyromaniac, he took me to a burn unit, and he took a lighter to my fingers. He didn't, like, he stuck my hand over the stove, and I didn't even learn that time. And I almost caught the house on fire. So he took a lighter. He didn't burn my fingers, but he burned them, made them hot, right? It's a little excessive, a little scary for a kid. But at the same time, like, I really wasn't behaving. When I set my mind to something, I did it. And I was just influenced, here and there. But other than that, like, I grew up a good kid. I didn't have any juvenile, charges or anything of that sense. I never was in front of the law. But almost sometimes it's like, if I would have seen a little bit more of it, maybe I wouldn't have ended up running down the wrong roads.
Tell us how the military comes to fruition in your life.
So so I end up losing my grandfather, and I end up gaining a drug addiction to meth. Problem was, I was working at a tire company, and I got promoted to assistant manager. I was the manager's right-hand man. I was never high at work. I just partied on the weekends. So I was like this closet meth addict that nobody knew about, and I wasn't struggling. I was a functioning meth addict, I guess. I get a phone call. I'm sitting on my bed one day at my parents' house because I was still living there. I was still at my parents' house, and I was sitting on the bed, and I get a phone call, and I pick it up, and I'm like, "Hello," and he's like, "This is a U.S. Army recruiter." Yeah, right. Click. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not joining the Army. Like, I'm over here doing dope. Like, this is not gonna work. So I hang up, and I set the phone down, and the next 24 hours really weighed on me because I had missed my grandfather's spreading of his ashes because I felt guilty because I was doing drugs. He would never approve of this. He would never, ever approve of what I was doing at the time. So I didn't even go to see when they spread his ashes after he passed away. So from there, we turn, and that next 24 hours, it wouldn't leave my mind. I was like, I need a change. It was just like moving from Colorado to Wyoming to Arkansas back to Colorado. I needed that solid line of change, something to make a difference in my life. So the next day I called back, and I got Master Sergeant Henderson on the phone, and he says he was an old Mississippi, Missouri guy, heavy Southern accent, right? And he's like, "Oh, well, come on down." So I go talk to him. He's like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to be an airborne ranger." He's looking at this 5'10", 123-pound twerp. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to be such a killer. Like, have fun, dude. Like, you're good. So we take off, and or we start going through the paperwork and everything. And he's like, "Can you pass the drug test?" And I'm like, "In a week." I'm like, "Not today. We can't do it today." He's like, "When was the last time you did drugs?" I was like, "I think this was like a Wednesday." I'm like, "Sunday?" And he's like, "Well, at least you're honest." And I'm like, I mean, I can't lie to you. If you're going to drug test me, you're going to know exactly what's going on. So we wait until I get a clean pee, and he's like, "Can you do push-ups, sit-ups, stuff like that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't do this either." He's like, "Well, start going to this training stuff. We'll meet you at the park during certain days, and we'll do some running." And never met him. It went pretty quick. So I went in December to MEPS, and when I went to MEPS, that's where you take your ASVAB, where you get your score. The most important part of the ASVAB is your GT score. That's your overall assessment of all the scores. I had a 126. So 120, you can do whatever you want in the military. You want to go be a Navy SEAL? You want to be a nuclear expert? You want to be a submarine driver? You want to be a boat commander? Whatever. So then they say, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to be an airborne ranger. And they're like, wait, no, dude, you're not, like they were like, you're smarter than this. Can we get you somewhere else? And I'm like, the thing has a $20,000. The bonus says $20,000. And mind you, this is 2004. We had already invaded Afghanistan. I watched the towers fall, and we're already invading Iraq at this time. So I knew I had a purpose. I knew I had something that I could go do that was outside of myself, that was bigger than who I was. So when I left when I was at MEPS, and I told them I want to be an 11 Bravo, I want to be an infantryman, and then they'll send me to airborne school, and I'll go to RIP, which is Ranger Indoctrination Program, and then you go into Ranger school. Well, fast forward, I'm scared of heights, but I'll jump out of an airplane. I'll never explain this. I'll never be able to, ever. A lot of guys will tell you, they're like, all my jumps are night jumps. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, all of them are night jumps. I'm like, you close your eyes, dude. I try, but I love jumping out of airplanes. But if me and you walk up to the top of a 50-story building, I'm not going near the edge. I feel like I've already hit the ground twice, and I'm just up there and I'm like, oh, it's so wobbly. The building's not moving anywhere, but I'll stand on the back of a C-17 at 1,200 feet and chuck deuces, higher, it doesn't matter to me. You could do high altitude and high altitude open, high altitude low open. Any of those things are great times. But if I don't have a parachute, I'm not standing there. So I go from being not a complete mess up, but a hidden, really hidden drug addiction. And I was able to cut that off. Like, it's meth. It's not anything with your body. You just got to go to sleep. It's not, you're not physiologically addicted to the drug. It's mental. It's all you. So I went to basic. That was a culture shock of all shocks, because here you got these guys yelling at you, making your whole shit over your head. Can't call your mom. They didn't have stress cards. They didn't hold nothing. I didn't have nothing to stop them. They would do whatever they needed to do to make me listen. Like we in basic training, we all got in big trouble because there was four fat kids, and one of them lived was in the bunk next to me, and he used to always tell me, he's like, get your bacon grease fat ass off my wall, Private. And you're trying not to laugh because you're going to be in trouble laughing at the dude, and then he's going to make you work out with the dude, or make him do push-ups with you on his back, or you're on his back or something. Just some wild stuff. But come to find out, these guys were breaking out. They had a skinny kid that was breaking out of the barracks at night, going to the BXPX. He was buying candy bars and selling them to the fat guys inside the unit in basic training. So, we're all in there just, trying to do what we're doing, and we get in this huge amount of trouble. Then they make us empty the entire barracks. And there's a thunderstorm, and we are in Georgia. We're in Columbus, Georgia. Right out there in the nasty, nasty part of the weather, right? Thunderstorm, lightning, rain, and we're setting our barracks up on the football field as if we were inside. And then we spent the entire night in the position of attention in bed, So you're laying there in bed, and and then they're making you say the Pledge of Allegiance. They're making you repeat the leadership quote, everything. And I remember just laying there, and I was like, what did I do? What the fuck is wrong with me? I was just getting high. I could have just stopped. But now I'm here 4 years. I have no choice. But I was committed. I had seen guys quit, and they're like, I'm a conscientious objective. I can't kill somebody. And I'm like, well, I don't know until I do it. So we'll figure it out at that point. But I got done with airborne school and basic training, and from there you go to Ranger Indoctrination Program, and that's before you go to Ranger School. So this is so that you can go into Ranger Battalion, and that was my ultimate goal. I wanted to be one of the best door kickers on the planet, and I wanted to do it with the most violent gang of them all. 3rd Bat, 1st Bat, and 2nd Bat. Those boys do not play around. They bring in 90 badasses, and they leave with 90 badasses, and they take no losses, right? It doesn't matter how much they have to use, how much explosives they just wasted. They're gonna finish the job. And that's all I kept in my mind. Well, I ended up having a stress fracture in my foot that eventually worked its way into a fracture, right? So on a ruck march, I could barely walk anymore, and I had my finger touching the rucksack because you can't drop more than an arm's length away. So I'm like, okay, I'm right here. So I have my pinky hooked on the rucksack in front of me. And so that way I'm not pulling because you can't grab technically. And the instructor comes over and he's like, Boden, he's like, get in the truck. I'm like, no, I'm not. I didn't even listen. I just kept my head down and I kept walking. I'm on the last road march. I got like 4 miles left to do this. No, we're not doing this. Or I was on the second to last road march technically. No, we're not doing this. We're not quitting now. We're not giving up at this point. I'm already fucked up and hurt. I'm not going to do this again. The beds in the barracks are flea infested. They're about 72 years old. I'm pretty sure every World War I vet was in that building at one time. And now we're still sleeping on their same shit. So when I I kept walking. 2 more instructors come over and they're like, Boden, it's time. And I'm like, no. That time I was like, no, I'm not. I am not stopping. And they lifted me up and they threw me in the truck. And they're like, we can't have you hurting yourself like that, right? Like knowingly making your situation worse. And we don't know what's going on with you totally, but we know you're not bullshitting this. So get in the truck. And that's the whole thing. Like guys fake injuries, guys fail because they suck at what they're doing. Guys fail because they're weak. But I didn't want that, and they seen that. So when it came down to the end of like when I got hurt and I had to go heal, he was like, listen, you got 6 to 8 weeks of healing. You can stay here and then redo the program. And I'm like, I don't want to stay here. And he's like, I was like, I can't heal. It's not even sanitary for me to be in there, much less rest, So now you're going to stick me in the same barracks, but I got to stay in there all day, all night. Like I can't go anywhere. I don't have a car or nothing like that. I'm not necessarily like, it's almost like you're still in basic training because you're still in the first phases of training. I've never been introduced to the real army. I've never been in a real formation. Like I've only done schooling. So he's like, listen, I will not blackball you from school or coming back. He's like, so we'll put you on worldwide status with return orders if possible. I'm like, okay. And I watch him stamp the paperwork right there, worldwide, which that's going to give me 3 duty stations of choice. They'll send you wherever the hell they want. But they make you feel like you get a choice, right? And when you're choosing, they're like, well, there's Vincenza, Italy. There's Fort Bragg in Alaska. And I'm like, Alaska? No. Bragg? I'm not going to North Carolina. Who wants to be in there? Bragg. I'm like, Vincenza, that sounds like a great place to be. Yeah, no, that was not where I went. But when I was at 3rd Battalion, that's where the training's at in Georgia, for Ranger School. And I got to meet the guy from Black Hawk Down that pulled the pilots out.
Wow.
That man looks melted, but it's like, you don't meet that kind of a human twice in a life, right? Somebody that pulled out 2 pilots while they were on fire. Like that instilled something in me, just like my grandfather did, just like all those ass whoopings did for my dad. Those really instilled in me that determination, like, okay, I can do this as long as I set my mind to it. I didn't want to be the druggy kid that I was. I didn't want to be the little kid that just started shit, ran my mouth. I'd fight when I was little. Not that I would win, but I would fight. I wasn't scared to get my ass knocked out. But what good did that do me, right? So I end up going. I get my orders to Alaska, and once we get up there, the military is the most amazing experience I've ever had. Part of the hard part is you still have ass kissers, just like you do in school or anywhere else. Whoever's in charge, they got these suck ups. And it's like, dude, quit riding dude's dick. Like, we get it, you like him and you want to be just like him, but like, we're trying to learn some shit. We're trying to train. I'm not trying to ride the donkey and get a free ride. Oh, here we go. I love so and so. Well, they do what they call it. So to go into sniper school, you have to be an expert shooter for, I think, 3 or 4 times before they'll even consider it. So you can't fail at shooting ever, basically. So you have to get 36 out of 40 or higher. And I had gotten 37, 38, and 40 twice. So I qualified automatically to do what they do is called a battle march shoot. Now it's a competition of not only physical fitness, but endurance with shooting. So we did a 10-mile road march with 125 pounds as fast as you can. It's all on you. You're not in a formation. You're not with a buddy. I came in second on the road march because Teskey has the longest legs possible. It was like walking next to a dude with tree poles on for legs. You're like, dude, I can't keep up with this guy. I got these midget things, you know? So we get done, but at the end of the road march, when you're nice and tired, that's where the shoot part comes in. So they have a berm they have a target at 0, right? And then they have a berm at 100, 200, all the way out to 1,000. Well, your ammo is your first shoot. You have to run from the 1,000-yard marker to the 1 to 900. Or the 1,000. So you shoot at 1,000. You run back to 1, then you run back to 9, 1, 8, 1, 7, 1, 6. All the way down to where you're back at 100 meters, and then you go from 100 meters to 25. I missed 2 shots. They were with a pistol. I was fine with everything else. This is where I learned about you can flip sights on a pistol, because I'm left eye dominant, and I never knew I was. So when I shoot a pistol, I move it over and I miss. But I missed 2 shots, so I was in good standings. My time was good fit, for the ruck march, and now my shooting's good. So they come in, they're like, "Hey, you're top spot. You're getting it, right?" And I'm like, "Sweet." Well, now you have everybody that could have tried out for this, all these ass kissers that are all over the NCOs, and I'm always getting in trouble because I'm mouthy once again. My squad leader's like, "Hey, Boden, go over there and chip ice." And I'm like, "You fat fuck, you wouldn't chip ice yourself. Go fucking chip it before why do I got to chip it? You wouldn't do it, And I'd get a counseling statement. "Oh, Boden running his mouth again. He has no respect for his NCOs. No, I don't have respect for you." You know what I mean? And the funny thing is that man to this day is one of my closest friends. Like, the one that I did not respect him, but the one I gave the hardest time. He was Puerto Rican. You could barely understand him. I was his RTO, and it was like I was a translator half the time because nobody understood what the hell he was saying. So I'd get irritated and mouth off to him. But so we go to sniper school, and that is a lifetime experience. It's not a school that many people get to experience. It's not, there's only 2,000 active Army snipers at any given time. 2,000 out of the whole military. That's your guard, that's your regular Army, everybody. But it really tests more than just your shooting skills. I'd say that's the least that they're worried about, is they already know you can shoot, right? Because they've got your shooting on paper. Now they have to train you. Can you identify a target? Can you handle stress? Can you stalk somebody? Can you hide? Can you evade? Can you do these things outside of shooting someone? And, I loved stalking, and that's when you get in the woods and they have the guys up on the trucks and you see them and they have numbers or they have letters, and you have to fire a blank shot at the truck. And then they have guys with 20-foot flags on these poles, right? And they're just walking around. And the instructors are up on glass. So now you have snipers that have been doing this for years. Like, things just stick out to you once you do this. Like, I can walk through down a road, and the whole road's covered in woods like it is outside, right? And I would see the one barrel out. It would just stand out because nothing's straight, nothing's black. So my brain automatically identifies it, right? Same way for them. But I wasn't experienced at this. So we're out there, and I take my shot, and they're trying to find me, and they're finding all these other guys, and I'm like, shoot, I hope I did this right. Like, but luckily the comment that, like, the guy kept trying to walk him in. He's like, "He's at your feet," and I was never even down on the ground. I was behind a camera tripod, but I was behind bushes on the back side of them. So I was shooting through a big old thing of bushes. And then, so I was completely screened. And he's like, "I don't know where this guy's at. He's in there like a tick on a deer's asshole." And I'm like, yes. Yes, this is great, But, it's physically enduring. You're road marching 12 miles with a 60-pound weapon and all the ammo with it. But they make sure, if you're not meant to be there, you're not going to pass that school. The attrition rate is somewhere between 80 and 90%. So only 10 to 20 people pass out of 100. That's ridiculous. And matter of fact, at the end of my school, they do a written test, right? And of course, I'm not good at written tests, but they have these old Xerox, like the old printers. That's what they had at the time, was just a regular printer, and they printed on a piece of paper, and it was a guy in a bush with binoculars. And they ask you, is this outline? Is this shade? Or is this something else? How are you seeing this guy in the bush? And I was like, oh, outline, because I can see the circles of binoculars. Nothing's perfectly round in nature. Nothing's straight nor black. Or glare. Could have been glare. Could have been any one of these three things. We're talking about a Xerox. We're not talking about an actual photo. So I had 4 or 5 questions that were just like that. Well, I went in and I asked to talk to the instructors, the head instructor, and I'm like, listen, this is why I answered this question this way, this one this way, this one this way. Well, I only missed 1. You're allowed to miss 2. Your third, you fail. So I was able to explain away the ones, why I disagreed and he agreed. So from there, I mean, now I've been through basic, I've been through airborne school. I failed, I didn't fail, but I hurt my foot and I wasn't able to complete that. So to me, it was a little bit of a setback, a little bit of feeling of failure. But the weird thing about the Army is in Fort Benning, Georgia, that's where they have the Ranger School. And right next to it is Sniper School. Well, it's kind of like becoming a Blood or a Crip. You will never go to the other school. They do their buddy runs by us, and the sniper instructors, we're in our ghillie suits, full out ghillied up, wet. We had just climbed out of the ghillie wash, so that's where they test it, and you see them like crawling in the videos through the ditch, and they're like going under stuff and over stuff. They're trying to test the suit, and that thing gets heavy. Not only is it like 3 layers, and you have to build your own. So like my mom, my sister, everybody helped me build my ghillie suit. My grandma helped me sew it, but it was like 3 layers of Carhartt on the chest and all the parts where you lay down. The back I had vented, so that way it isn't so hot, and that way I could tie on, the burlap strands, and you have to tear burlap sacks because back then they didn't have just rolls of burlap you could buy. So you had to go get the burlap sack, cut it, and pull each strand out and put your colors in. So you weigh what? Another 100 pounds, and then you have a rifle, and you're sopping wet in the middle of whatever time of year it is. For us, it was the spring. Here comes the Rangers, and they're doing their buddy run with their stupid blue guns, and they're like, we're Rangers, and, and this time, like, my redemption, right? Like, finally, like, I'm in a competitive school to this. I'm in a more elite or class, less people get to go, because now Ranger School is a leadership course. I have nothing against women being in positions of like that, but at the same time, I don't believe they fit in combat, and I don't believe they fit in Ranger School. If you're a non-combat MOS, why do you need to be treated like you're combat? If you want to go kick doors, go kick doors. Don't be a cook. That's all I know. So so they tell us, don't let any of them beat you. Now you got the sniper instructor saying you're gonna fail if they beat you at the run. They're just starting a 5-mile run. You're just finishing like a 10-hour smoke fest. Okay. Challenge accepted. Gotcha. So all of us ran, and, we didn't lose to the Rangers. That was one thing we didn't do that day. But upon graduating that school, like, you're on top of the world. I was a 23-year-old kid, and I was taught nothing but how to kill. I could kill you from 1,000 yards, or I could kill you from a hand's reach away. They teach you close, you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is before UFC got big. We were doing that every morning. We were grappling and fighting and beating each other down every morning. Level 4 combatives is in the Army when I was in. To be able to pass that level, they had a huge dude. This dude was massive, big old biceps on this guy. He was a Golden Glove boxer like 4 times. And you have to achieve the clinch, and that's where they're hitting you, and you have to be able to trap their arms down like this and hold them, but you can't strike them. So you're just a punching bag until you figure out how to get this dude's arms down. I mean, he slid me back on my pockets like twice. I'm like, whoa, here we go. Hits me again. And I got up and I was like, no, this is no. So I went in, I wrapped him up and I chief clinched, but was able to do that. But like they're training us to do nothing but kill. And we hadn't been to war. We had guys that were coming back that were mixed in with us that had been 2 deployments, and one of them had been to the first Desert Storm. The rest are, current Iraq, Afghanistan, and they're just going back. So that's where, we get ready, we get done with training, and they're like, okay, it's time to go. We get our deployment orders. In November 2006, we're flying from Anchorage, Alaska to Kuwait, and then we'll stay in country there for a couple weeks because you have to get acclimated. Obviously, you're going from negative 40 to 140, which literally it was negative 28 degrees in Fairbanks. We get on a plane, we land somewhere in like Dallas or wherever the heck they stopped and got gas, and then we flew to Amsterdam. We landed at 4:20. Everybody on the plane was acting like they smoke weed, and the commander's like, seriously? You're going to act like this on it? Don't act like... I'm like, what are you guys cheering for? You can't do that. The commander's sitting at the front of the plane. Like, you can't be saying you like smoking weed, dude. Like, it's not a great idea. So we leave Amsterdam. When we landed in Kuwait, it was 122 degrees when we walked off that jet. We went from a freezer to an oven, and it was just, again, another moment that you're like, oh shit, I'm here. Well, I gotta handle what I gotta do. I gotta handle and do business like usual. Gotta succeed.
Does your body adjust to that frigid temperature when you're in Alaska for that long? Like, what would you compare it to? Is it if it's say negative, 20 or 30 degrees? Right. Does it feel like a normal day here once you're here for a while?
It does. I mean, I always felt like anything below negative 25 was just cold. That's where you're like, man, it's cold. You could spit, it freezes, pour a cup of coffee, it freezes before it hits the ground. We trained in negative 78 that year. It was the worst situation. My hands were frozen. We were inside of a cacti doing drills with like, it's like a modified city, and they have these laser things that they can see where you're shooting and all this wild stuff, but you use blanks and whatnot. And I was second in the stack, and we kicked in the door. And as soon as we did, I identified the target, I pulled the trigger, and I watched my weapon. I watched the bolt freeze to the back, and nothing happened. Like, it just stuck open. I'm like, oh, it's cold. So I could see there was a round jam, so I went and I took my glove off, and I had a contact glove on. It was so cold, my hand froze almost instantly, like just stuck. Then I pulled the other one out because I'm going to rescue this one with the other one. Now I got two hands that are frozen. Luckily didn't get frostbite. They call it chilblain. That's what they call it right before frostbite. And so you do adjust, but that's why they take you. You have to spend 2 weeks doing PT over there and training to make sure that you're conditioned back over the other way, because your body is adjusted to being in those colder temperatures. Okay. They teach you, like when you're running, not to shave in the morning. Like, you wouldn't shave before morning PT because just the water in your face could freeze. Funniest thing, have you ever seen a man running in negative 35 and see his dick freeze? It hurts. I don't know personally, but if they stop off and take a pee and if there's any condensation inside of him and it's near it'll turn to an ice crystal in his own pants.
So how do you prevent that?
Yeah, I don't know. I just never peed. I was so scared. I seen it the first time. I was like, I can't do this. I can't be running down the road and have a popsicle in my pants. I mean, I always wore shorts too, because I was one of those that I didn't like running in pants. So I was like, okay. Now, it wasn't like negative 50. It was like negative 20, negative 30-ish, somewhere in there that I would still wear shorts in. I'd come home to Colorado and think I was on the beach, like you're asking. Like, yes, you acclimate to it, right? But so the only way you can prevent that is shake well. But then you got to be careful because they're going to think you're playing with it in the woods. So you can't do that too much, So just avoid peeing in general when you're out in that cold of weather and doing physical training. You just can't. Because even when you breathe, you see like their balaclavas or anything that's over their face, the ice just starts forming from their fog of their breath. And it's cold. After -25, it's just cold and miserable, and they're like, "Hey, let's go camping tonight," basically. And when they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna go camping, you sleep in the one without a heater. We're gonna go inside the shed." And it's like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, we're training. Training for what? Last time I checked, we're going to Iraq. We're not going to Russia. There is no no snow in Iraq." So like, but it did. I mean, in all, they know that training works off right. It's more, let's be honest, it's more like brainwashing you. They're conditioning you to keep you in the same state of mind that they need you in for combat, which is not a state of mind that is good for a human, not long term, and it's not something that's conducive to life, right?
Now, throughout your training, do you have any cravings for drugs, or is that completely gone?
No, completely gone. I had one instance where some dude, involved cocaine, and I thought it was a good idea to see what it smelled like. And I was so scared after that to even get UA'd that I never touched anything, right? So I'd never done coke before, never did it after, for years after that, didn't touch it. But I didn't even want to get high like that. I had no issues, no problems. When I went to Iraq, that's where, everything got a little bit more difficult. We took contact 408 times out of like 468 days. It's something wild. It was over 400 times, and we only went out like 50, 60 times more than that. So we took contact almost every day. And guys that went on from our unit went to Special Forces. They were Green Berets. They were this, they were that. And they're like, "Dude, we took more contact when we went to Iraq together than we did in Special Forces." He's like, "And I'm going to kick the door on purpose where we were just walking around as bait, And my deployment to Southeast Baghdad and Arab Jabor, I received 2 Purple Hearts. I mean, I was blown up more than that. And I mean, technically I'd probably have like 6 or 7 if I allowed that, but I wouldn't, Mine, I was wounded both times. I have a hole through my right shoulder that was about the size of a nickel, a whole roll. I was hit by a roadside bomb in January of 2007. I had already watched a couple people get hurt. That's traumatic in itself, right? I mean, it's kind of like moving fast forward really quick. It's kind of like seeing your buddy and get walked off the yard and you don't know where they go and if they're even okay. Like they're saying, "Oh yeah, he's fine. He's not dead." Cool. Well, there's a lot in between healthy and not dead. So, but you don't have time to process any of that. You don't have time to get through any of that. You only have time to get ready for the next mission and keep your head in the game, or something else is going to happen. And if you're not living in that 3-foot space of everything that you actually can control, you're most likely going to get yourself or somebody else killed. And our whole goal was obviously for us, every one of us, to make it home. I was in a more advanced unit when I say like it was LRS-D is an old term they use, long range reconnaissance detachment. So like their long range scouts that they'd send out first, they switched it with RISTA because we were airborne, so they could fly us over in the middle of the night, jump us in further in, and we could sneak in a lot farther, a lot faster than a person on foot, or you can't take a vehicle. It's not very hidey. You can't really hide a truck driving it across the desert. But I mean, our saw gunner was shot in the hand the first day, the first mission. We lost our interpreter. They shot him in the knee and he lost it from the knee down. First mission. Like this was, it was not a good start, and we knew that the area we were in, we had a lazy unit before us. So they always drove trucks. They were never dismounted on foot. We never drove trucks. We were always dismounted. Colonel Odom, our Ranger battalion, or our battalion commander, was a Ranger, not our Ranger battalion. Colonel Odom ran 1st and 40th Cavalry like it was a Ranger battalion. Like people used to always get mad. "This ain't Rangers." And he's like, "Yeah, but my guys are better than yours, so just shut up. Sit back and enjoy the show," And we'd outrun them, we'd outruck them, we'd shoot them, it didn't matter. We'd outdo the parade session too. We don't even practice the dress stuff, but we would do better than them because we're more disciplined. And we were built to be war fighters. And I think that about my leadership most, is that every one of them cared enough to make sure that we understood how much we had to do to make it home. That we couldn't just lollygag around, oh, look at the stars and check out some stuff. We're not over here sightseeing. We are over here to do two things: win the war and save hearts and minds. You're trying not to be mean, because let's be honest, there is things that happen in war, right? I seen blonde-haired, red-headed kids over there, whiter than me and you combined. You're sitting there like, what is a white dude? And he's Arabic? Let's do the years. Was your dad a soldier, in 1991? Like, so the country went through some shit with us to begin with. We'd already been there for 3 days. We blew everything up and we went home. In Desert Storm. They called it the literal name for what they called it was the Thunder Run, because when they drove those tanks in, and everything that they had, they shot and they blew everything up that moved, and blew it all the way up on the way out. So now we're back at second war. George Bush is our chief, commander in chief, and we're trying to win something. Is it even a winnable war? We're trying to sustain a democracy for a country that doesn't want democracy. They want the freedom, but they just want the freedom so they could take over and they could rule. And it's a lot different when you're living amongst people that are just Sunni and Shiite, and it's not, there's no Baptists, Catholics, Protestants. It's not like that. It's left or right, or however you want to look at it, forward or back, left or right, black or white. They're just two different types of people. And you're stuck in the middle of that, and they both hate you. And then you got to deal with Islamic Army of Iraq. You got to deal with ISIS. And those guys, luckily they fight each other, and then they fight you, so it kind of works out in your advantage. But realistically, we're just over there trying to make it home. Yes, we ran a lot of crazy important missions that, we took a lot of bad guys off the street. But at the same time, we did a lot of walking around and as bait, more or less. Looking back at it as a 40-year-old man, damn, we were just trying to get shot at. Like, why? And what happened from that? One of the best men I've ever known was Sergeant Montgomery. The night that he ended up getting killed, we were at the patrol base, and I was supposed to be like the lead of RTO, whole different mission set. My comms wouldn't work. He fixed it, went back out. He fixed it, stopped working again. So I got moved to the middle of the element, and I was a different RTO because I could talk to battalion, but he could talk to the unit, and that was the problem I had. I couldn't get the channel between me and all the guys to work as well. And we went out walking. We went out on mission. We went to do what we do every night, every time. And, it was one of those nights like that I'll never be able to, I don't want to erase it at all, but I'll never be able to forget any of the moments. We were walking, calling up, we're call sign this, and that's telling them where we're at on the map. And we went down, we'd passed the mosque, we were checking the mosque, we were checking the known spots, and he was walking, and he turned off into the reed line where the canal had ran, and he stepped onto a pressure plate. Nobody knew what happened because it's dark. No, nobody near him, nobody even know who it was. And it decimated him, and he was almost dead on contact. But, when you have somebody that you've looked up to, that his story about him and his kids and the love he had for them and the relationship that they had that shouldn't have existed the way that it did, and his wife and all those things surrounded it, it's like, man, why did he have to die? Why did he have to get hurt? anybody out here could have stepped on that, and not to belittle anybody else, but I didn't have kids. He had like four or five kids to go home to. And where me, I just had my parents. I didn't have responsibilities. I wouldn't even take a girl seriously as dating. They'd be like, "Oh, I love you," and I'm going to die. See you later. They're like, "What?" And I'm like, "I'm not going to be your boyfriend. I'm going to Iraq in literally like 42 days. Bye." But he was killed. As soon as it went off, I remember like I slowly took a knee, and it was just quiet. The whole silent. And you could hear like the grass blowing, the reeds blowing. And then you start hearing people check in on the radio, figuring out who's hurt, who's hit. We come up to that it was Monty. We go up to find him. He had been blown up off of the path and really wounded in such dramatic ways. It's ridiculous. He basically, you could see his aortic tree. So whereas his heart valves or vessels and veins come down out, basically from there down was just not there. So we put him, we were not the type of unit to call up a medevac when somebody's already dead. That is meant for someone to have their life saved, right? And if you're on there because you have a stubbed toe and somebody's there because they're missing a leg and they don't get that right and they end up dying, that's on you because you're not doing the right thing. So we spent seemed like an eternity getting ready to go back. We couldn't tell anybody. I knew because I was an RTO and I had to go over to the site and call up to command what was going on. So I knew everything. And I'm trying to just I knew what I seen, I knew what I heard, and I knew what we had lost. And we were trying to keep the impact on all of the guys more subdued because we didn't want everybody out there to be so frazzled. So we kept it as a need to know basis. Leadership was like, don't say anything over the radio. Nobody say anything about who it is until we need to tell them or we get back. So we put them on a polis litter, and that's just like a net with 6 handles, right? You have 2 at the feet, 2 at the head, 2 at the side. And you always carry a soldier head first. You never do it feet first. It's disrespectful. It doesn't matter what condition they're in. So as we're walking, he's laying, he's laying like this as you're looking at me, and I was on this side at first, and I was gonna carry him. Like I was just focused. I had my hand in the loop. Didn't matter how long this took. It didn't matter how much this weight was. I'm gonna get my brother home. But the hardest part that I'll never forget is the entire time, every time I walked, his broken arm would hit me. And I could feel his arm poking my leg. So we get to a certain point where we start having to he's heavy, he still has his body armor, all of his gear. It's not light. So we need to give his gear to somebody. So we take his gear off, we give it to somebody, give some of the gear to somebody else, and we get 2 more guys to rotate in. And from there, we rotated carrying him until we got back to a truck. And from there, when somebody's KIA, they take him back to the fob. You have to re-identify him. And I couldn't leave. Like I look back at it, like I couldn't let go. Like I was just in shock. Like I wasn't his best friend, and that dude wasn't my ace deuce, but me and him had conversations people would never know about, just like he had with hundreds of people. And those conversations will forever stick with me and forever be an important part of who I am. But he really instilled in me like my grandfather's ways of being a man and taking ownership of even shit that's not yours. If it's for the better of somebody else, like stepkids or, step grandchildren or whatever the situation may be, filling that void for somebody else to be able to be supportive, loving, and caring. Like he was different. Like even though we were all violent war door kickers, we're all dads, we're all brothers, sisters, cousins to somebody. But so we get back to taking him up on the Angel flight, and that's when they bring in helicopters to fly the remains out. He gets his final identification. We pull his his like watch, his um other more personal belongings off of him, and we take him, and he goes. I remember walking back to the barracks, and just like the entire time, like everything was just so surreal, so slow, and just real, because like we just lost one of our best guys. And it's like, now what are we going to do? We have mission tomorrow, the day after that. For months, we're going to keep doing this. I'd already been wounded. So like I knew I was the only guy to get injured and come right back. We'll get into that in a second. But so we got him back, and that's where it was like, okay, let's take a shower or whatever. Well, the barracks were dark because it was so late. I didn't turn any lights on. I grabbed my shower bag. I grabbed my PT clothes, the stuff I was going to sleep in, which was just PT shorts and some underwear and my flip-flops. So I grabbed that stuff and my toiletries, and I head off to the shower, and I don't remember anything until I looked down, and like the whole shower was just red. And that's where it really set in, like, no matter what we're doing here, no matter why we're here or who we are here, we're all facing our own mortality. And that death stuck with me for a very long time. I still to this day struggle with survivor's guilt. And I feel guilty that I feel guilty. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? You have this feeling like it should have been me. He had kids. Well, I have 4 kids now, so it shouldn't have been me either. But at the same time, when I was going through this stuff, like we were losing more friends. I lost my medic, who was my roommate. Springer he always told me, hey, Jesus loves you. I'm like, dude, not this dude. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, no. He's like, Christ will save you if you want. Like, you can come to Christ at any time, and salvation's yours. This is my roommate, and I'm like, yeah, fuck off, loser. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus is a crutch. Man, was I a jerk. But, like, he wrote home to his parents, and I didn't know this. I didn't know this till after he got killed. We loaned him to another unit, and they had him walking in front of a Buffalo, which I don't know why he's in front of a mine-proof vehicle. You should be in the mine-proof vehicle, especially if you're the medic. The one that's supposed to save a life should not be out there looking for a bomb. Well, when he was killed, and that was hard on us too, because A, we loaned him out to you, and you didn't bring him back. And again, he always told me, like we'd be laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep, and he'd be like, Cody. I'm like, what? He's like, hey, Jesus loves you. And it was just wild. Like, you can be saved. And he read his Bible every night. He knew scripture. He knew everything. And I always heard him, but I never listened to him, right? Never took it to heart. Met his parent, we go through more war. And I mean, we could talk about this all day. We lost like 27 guys over there. Something ridiculous. But I carry each and every one of those times further on to the next one. July came around to that year. We were hit by a vehicle-borne explosive device that was it was bigger than the bomb that Timothy McVeigh used to take down the Oklahoma City building. And we were in a 2-story house. They blew the walls over. They knocked us all out, but we got back up, and like this whole place was wrecked. Like, I thought they hit him more like a bomb on the roof. And I'm waking up, and my ears are ringing, and I'm like, what is going on? I look around, everything's fell in. The nests for the 50 cals, they have the sandbags on the back, on top, all around, and they're on a mount, and they're in fighting positions. Well, the fighting positions are all caved in. Like, well, what are we going to do? We look over the edge, the wall's falling down. Now we have, so right before this, we had a 360-degree assault. So we probably had 50, 60 guys attacking us, and we didn't even know. We sent a patrol out to clear some guys off of a bridge. I shot at them. They wouldn't get off the bridge. I shot the bridge, hit them with dirt or hit them with rocks and concrete. They stayed on the bridge. I didn't feel it was right to kill them because they're sitting on a bridge, even though the sign gave me rights to, or not rights to, the sign gave me legal leeway to do it. But I'm not going to shoot you for sitting on a bridge. Now start digging and I'll do that. Different story, right? But when I fired the 7.62 over their head, they're like, oh, they duck. And then they sat back up there. Shot another 6.76. They ducked. Then I was like, okay, let's get the Barrett out. And I shot the end, like the end of the square of the concrete that runs down the side of like just a little bridge. And the concrete just exploded and it hit the side of their legs and they're, hit them. And they're like, oh man, they get back up and sit down on the bridge. I can see these guys. I can see that this one guy's got a little blood on his leg or something, like you guys won't get off this bridge. Well, the town down below us, we called it Dogtown. They're all right there hanging out and I'm shooting over their heads, which is normal because they never mess with us, but they knew, we would get messed with all the time. Sorry. So they sit back and we're like, okay, we're going to send a patrol out, 5-man squad. They're just right down the road, 500 meters. We're going to go tell them get off the bridge. If they don't, we're going to engage them, and then that's different. Well, before they could get there, they were hit by a bomb, an IED that was hidden behind the chicken coop. When that went off, we started taking fire from 360 degrees. Everywhere. There was guys everywhere shooting at us. And there's only 2 squads. So you're talking max 14 people at this patrol base. Yeah, we have all the guns and firepower, but eventually the numbers don't add up, right? So this we're engaged and I'm running across the roof and they're like, Boden, come over here, shoot at this guy. He keeps popping out over here. I can't get him. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm running around and I'm crossing the roof and my Barrett 50 cal's sitting in the center of the roof loaded. And it's got one shot because it's a long recoil, so it won't reload on its own because I'm not big enough. They start screaming VBIED. I immediately stop. I throw my M24 down. I grab my Barrett and I run towards that side of the roof. And as soon as I could see the driver in the truck, I pulled the trigger. And everybody remember it was that fast. Boom. I remember the inside turning a color, and next thing you know, it detonated. And that was the surprise. We didn't know what happened. Well, he had a dead man switch, so if you shot him, killed him, it detonated in place. And when it did, it blew the walls over, blew the things down. We were doing sternum rubs on guys, trying to wake them up, doing everything we could to get these guys to wake up. And the guns are stuck pointing in there, and we're just telling them, shoot them, make them think we're here. Don't let them think that we're all fucked up on top of this roof, or they're gonna run through the fucking wall, and we're all dead. They're gonna run through here and kill us, or worse, kidnap us and do whatever they want. So the command hears on the radio, the last thing before they're telling them, yes, we're getting attacked for 360 degrees. We need this because a patrol just got hit. And they're like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And they hear broken arrow, fuck, and comms go out. Broken arrow is lines have been breached. We're compromised. Nothing. You got to get to us. We're up shit creek and we do not even have a boat. We're sitting in the middle of it. And the line of strikers that sit on the road so that we could drive out safely so they couldn't put bombs. The road was called Red Wings because it was so bloody and so hard to drive on without getting blown up that they put a striker or a military vehicle every 300 yards down this road. It was actually every 150. They were staggered. And so half of them, they called up, they seen this mushroom cloud go up in the air. And it goes up in the air, and so they hear it, they know something's wrong. So they break down half the guys. The lead truck's on its way. But when Broken Arrow goes across now, all aircraft that have, it doesn't matter if it has one bullet or full of rounds, it's going to come put it down on the ground to save us, right? So we have A-10 Warhogs coming in. We have Apache gunships coming in. We have the Stryker crew flying down the road. And I remember I stand up and I look back because I can hear the strikers coming, just their motor, the whine of their engines, and I see the gun terrain towards one of the houses and just leveled the houses, like 4 of them. And they just kept shooting. Like, that was the whole thing. Like, if it was moving, if it looked like it could be dangerous, it was about to be flattened. And about 2 seconds later, an A-10 gunship comes down. And if you've seen warthogs on social media, they're like, brah. That is not a way for anybody to ever understand how loud that thing is. It's like, bah. It's like you're sitting in a car with like 6 15s in the back and you're listening to bass songs, and it's just deep. So we end up getting all the wounded out of there. Medevac flies off. I'm still hurting. I'd been knocked out. I was blown all the way across the roof, and I hit a wall that was this big. There was nothing. On the right side, I went right through the wood off the 2nd story and landed in the parking lot. I'd have been paralyzed if best. So I realize I can't breathe. I think I've inhaled stuff, there's a good chance that nothing's really that wrong. Right? Little did I know, right? Next thing you know, I start coughing up blood. It's getting worse and worse. By this time, it's about 20 minutes after our company starts showing up. Our guys do from the FOB, and our doctor's on board. And he sees me and he's like, "Can you stay out of this shit, Boden?" By this time, I've been hurt like 5-6 times. And he's like, "I should have fucking known you were fucked up." He's like, "Go figure, you're bleeding." And I got like these little cuts. I'm like, "I don't know what's going on, doc. Like, I can't breathe. I can't, like, something's happening." And he starts checking me out. And he's like, "Well, your back plate's shattered." He's like, "You hit something?" I was like, "Yeah, I flew into a wall." He's like, "Well, that's, probably why you can't breathe. You probably got broken bones." And I'm like, "No, I've had a broken rib. This is something different." I couldn't tell. So they medevac me. I pass out. When I get to the hospital, I come to, and I remember I woke up, and when I did, I'm looking at the doctors and they're talking about me, and my throat shifts. And at that point, I know I have a lung going down. I black back out. So they try to figure out what's going on with him. Is he internally bleeding? He's got no holes, like bullet holes, no shrapnel holes, nothing. Well, from slamming against the wall so hard, my back and my vertebra was so swollen, it was pinching off the nerves to my left lung. So it was just closing it, basically just turning it off. So from there, like, I mean, my shoulder, I'd already recovered from that. I was out 31 days after my shoulder got blown up. We were walking along. I was the end of the movement. Sergeant Watts, I think it was Watts, he crosses the road, and 19 propane tanks detonate when I get near it. Nobody would walk near me. I'm like, well, I'm alive. We're doing good here. Like, everything just blows up when I get near it. Not on me, just near it. So they always joked with me about, "Oh, don't get near Boden on mission. That shit'll just blow up on you." I'm like, "Well, thanks, guys. I'm glad that I'm just a dummy out here just getting everything detonated on me." But after that mission, like, we found a laptop a couple months later, or about a month later, when we were out in the field, and this laptop had video of this. So there was guys that were in the yard right next to us filming and shooting. A guy was right next to him shooting, all this, salami and bacon, we can't have it. Like, they were mad, dude. They knew what they were doing. Next thing you know, in the videos, they had 3 trucks full of guys with AKs. So, perspective switch. I'm on the roof. We're trying to get the guys to wake up. The guns are stuck. We don't really have any ammo to fire back. None of the other things, the warship, the air support's not close. The ground crew's breaking down, but they're not there yet. And we have 3 trucks riding into a mushroom cloud screaming, "Yes, we did it," And then you hear the gunfire from the roof. and all 3 trucks, like we seen the unedited videos, that was just raw video, they all stop. And they're like, wait, what the, not in English, obviously. We had the translator listen to it, and he's like, no, they were like, wait, what the heck? Like, they're not dead. This isn't right. And one of the trucks got laced with a 105 round from one of the strikers going around, and then the other 2 disappeared. But we were getting ready to get overran, and all of us would have been decimated. We would have been on the nightly news. Probably, I was Army, so they'll never make a movie about me because I was in the Army. Just know that. You have to be a Marine, which I don't understand, right? Like, the few, the proud. Well, what about the Army guys over here? Like, there's a lot of us that do the same things you guys do, and probably better. Just my opinion. But so all this goes on, and all this tragedy, all the heartache that's gone on. We've helped the good people we could help. We've tried to provide to the community support that we could provide, but we're still losing guys. It's just a war you can't win. Fast forward, we come back and they're like, listen, like, your back's too messed up. This is wrong with you. Your brain injuries. We don't want to turn you into a vegetable. So we're going to medically retire you. I fought with everything I had in me to not be discharged from the Army. That's all I knew. I was a U.S. Army sniper. Like, I couldn't go back to just being Cody. That was never a good choice to begin with. I didn't want to do it now. I was on pain pills, never abused them, never. If we were going to the bar that night, I'd stop taking, I'd wake up, I'd take my Oxycontin or my Percocet or whatever it was at the time, and I wouldn't take anything else the rest of the day. And then I'd go drink or whatever, and we'd have a fun Friday, Saturday night, and then I'd take my medicine like I was supposed to. I didn't take 2, I didn't take 3, I didn't take extra, I didn't take more, and I was like that. And then when I got out to the VA started sending me 90-day scripts. They started giving me higher prescriptions, sent me to a pain clinic with a doctor named Dr. Pepper. He was supplying me with, Opana level medication, which is for people that are like on their deathbed with cancer. You should never be walking around with high milligram Dilaudid, all this stuff. This is really the beginning of, not the beginning, but in the midst of all the big pharma and the OxyContin frenzy. But when the pain clinics were being bought off, all that stuff was being promoted. They make the movies, the girls go in there and give them all the incentives to sell or to prescribe more. So I end up going, getting out, and I discharge in September of 2009. I have a month left to leave, so I get the last month out of the Army as like vacation, and then I'm out. Well, my cousins live in Denver, and I'm going to the VA. I'm going to see them, whatever. And this is the first time I've ever been in trouble, right? I still had not, I'd used I'd used cocaine, I had used meth, but I was not returned to any of those. I drank, took my pills, whatever. Didn't abuse anything. Little did I know what coping I was doing. A little bit was a lot more than I understood, right? My self-medication was not intentional, but it did work. So I go, my cousins, they pull shark a bunch of college kids for like $6,000 or $7,000. Bar closes, last call comes, bar's closing. They want their money back. Well, I'm not a pussy, right? I'm not gonna watch my cousins give it back. My whole life I've been told how badass my cousins are and they fight and this and that. And I'm like, well, let's do this, dude. So I tell them, fuck you, you guys come get your money. And this kid that was talking shit, I walked over and I had to, I slapped him like twice. He wouldn't get up, so I walked off. And I was like, well, then why are you talking trash if, because I was just being a drunk idiot, thinking I was some kind of tough guy. As I'm walking back, an Arabic dude speaking barely any English is his best friend. He starts to get all aggressive and crazy, and all I remember is he was like shuffling down around his waistband and coming at me. My cousin was driving my truck at the time, so I reached in the back and I pulled my 45 out. I pointed it at him. He didn't back down. He kept coming, so I fired warning shots over his head. We got in the truck. We were in the truck and we left. So I didn't shoot anybody because I didn't need to, right? That's my training. Show, shout, shoot. And then you never made it to shoot because I was pulling away. You were no longer a threat to me. It was de-escalated. Mind you, I was really drunk. So we go back to I guess on the way there, I decided to throw my pistol out the window. In Aurora, Colorado, just chunked it out. It was a golf course for one, right on the green lawn. It was in between the road and the sidewalk for like 12 hours. No rounds, just an XD 45 chilling. Like no cops got called. Nothing. It took 2.5 hours for them to call the cops. And it was because they got pulled over drinking and driving. So he's like, oh, we got shot at. That's why I'm a drunk driver. And they're like, who shot at you? And then they went and figured out it was me. Well, they thought I was like some violent, crazy dude. They ran my plates. They knew I was a sniper, so they were ready, right? Meanwhile, I wake up, I'm like, where's my pistol, dog? We got to go get that shit. Like, why did I throw my pistol out the window? Like, it's mine. Like, if they come ask me, like, hey, do you have a 45? No. Well, where's your XD that's registered here? I don't know. Stolen? What was I going to say? So we went back. We found my pistol. As soon as we found my pistol, now, randomly, the victim that I slapped was driving to work. He sees us in the truck and we're like looking around. We're trying to find my pistol. He thinks we're looking for him. He calls Arapahoe County SWAT on my ass and they come and find me, dude. They pull me and my cousins over, make us all crawl out the driver door. My cousins are like, he did it. They're just snitching me out. And I'm like, give me a chance, dude. Like, don't even talk. Just shut the fuck up. And I went to jail for 18 months. Straight.
They gave you 18 months for that?
No, I was in straight for 18 months.
Wait, just to wait?
Just in county.
Why couldn't you get bail?
So they put up $250,000 cash only. That's a ransom. I should have called a hostage negotiator from the FBI. That way I could get a bond. Like, my parents were like, Cody, we can't do that. I'm like, nobody I know has got $250,000. So, or paid off property. They did change it to a surety, because it was illegal to keep $250,000 only that high. That's the only win we had. And I'm like, well, I still don't know anybody with $250,000 in property. I'm just me. And so, when I went, my parents hired me a great lawyer. Brad Lozo was one of the most amazing humans I've ever known. He still represents a guy, and he gets ostrich skin boots every year as payment. And he got this guy off whatever charges he was on. But his family was known as the Lozos and Lozos. Like, if you needed a criminal defense, these were the guys. These were the ones you needed to call. I was like, okay. So he came in, he seen me, and he asked me what's going on. And I was like, that's an impaired mental condition, right? He's like, the insanity plea, Cody? I was like, yeah, Brad, the insanity plea. He's like, no. I was like, yeah, it reads the definition. I was acting like a robot, shot at the idiots because that's what I'm trained to do. I didn't kill them. So, like, it fits the scenario. And he's like, no, Cody, we're not saying that. I said, well, Brad, I hired you that's what you're going to do. He's like, I've sent guys down for this, and none of them. He's like, Cody, I've never seen an impaired mental condition. It's 23 years a lawyer myself, and my dad's been a lawyer for 45. No one's ever gotten an impaired mental condition, and they've never gotten the insanity plea. They didn't think the door was a pumpkin, and the pumpkin was a door. He's like, you have to admit to the crime before you talk to the doctor. I was like, well, I did it. He's like, yes, but we're not going to tell the judge that. Not yet. He's like, that's not how this goes. So, like, I didn't understand, right? But long story short, 18 months, I'm also, mind you, I've never been around gangs. I've never been around any white gangs, any Bloods, any Crips. I've seen a couple of them in the Army, a couple Bloods, a couple Crips, but they didn't gang bang in the Army like that.
Wait, there were actually gang members in the Army?
Yeah, the Crips were actually really well known for sending it through. At one point, they wouldn't accept a Crip again because they were sending them in. They were getting booted right out and going to war in L.A.
So they wanted them to go to the military for training?
Yep, they wanted them to go through basic and as much schooling as they could, and then they would just get kicked out.
That's actually smart in a way, free training.
Very smart. And from the best, right? I mean, we're the only ones that are undefeated back-to-back world champs, so you gotta go where you can get it, you know?
But didn't the military catch on to this?
They did,
okay.
But it took a while. It took a couple of years, and then they're like, wait a minute, we're training a bunch of thugs and sending them back to the same spot. But so I go to, in Denver, like, you know how like some cities aren't very big? They're like actually 5 square blocks, and then like they call the whole area Denver. Yeah, Denver's like square blocks, like 5. It's not very big. So in Aurora or Arapahoe County was where I was at. Now, this is predominantly the hoods, you know, like 99%. Well, I'd say they're probably 80% black, 15% Hispanic, 1% white, and 4% something else. Like, so I was a very minority when I was in there. So that's when I was first introduced to like prison politics. I didn't ever agree with it because I don't hate you because of your skin color. I fought with guys that were black. My best friend Rondon was half black, half white. I would never discriminate against him for his skin color. You know what I mean? But that's not the world you live in there. You either fit in or you don't. And if you can't conform to what their rules are, then you know it's not going to work out for you. So I listened. I did 18 months with relatively no trouble. My parents, I went down for the impaired mental condition. And when I was down for talking to the doctor's like, yeah, impaired mental condition. He approved it. He said, this is absolutely an impaired mental condition. Because, you know, my lawyer finally went in and told the judge, I had 27 attempted murder charges. That's what it started with. It was 27 attempted murders, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I had a rap sheet that was like this long, and I've never been in trouble. You know, it was one night, 5 seconds. It was only 15 rounds to begin with, so I don't know how many people am I killing with one bullet, you know? So they turn around and they're like, okay, well, we're going to drop it down to this, menacing, you know. Well, before they did that, I went down for my impaired mental condition, and they put me in the state hospital for like a month. It was kind of nice because it's a break from jail and the normal pace, and you get your own cell and better canteen. So it was kind of a little vacation at some point. But I figured out while I was in prison, nobody cared about who I was. When I was looking over my shoulder, I didn't feel so crazy because because I was like, you know, like referencing like that I'm always going to be under attack, right? So I'm always looking over my shoulder, but I feel crazy because I'm always looking over my shoulder when I know I'm home and I'm safe. So I get arrested. I get around the people. You know, I went in. I went in as a preschooler with street knowledge, and I came out with my doctorate in cocaine. You know, just like the movie says. I went in with my bachelor's and whatever, and came out with my. That's how it worked. And I learned everything that these guys did and didn't do while hustling on the streets. So my parents end up coming up with $250,000 bond. My mom and dad's landlord had the houses to put up, so she put up the houses, all this stuff, and got me bonded out. Then the DA puts me on a hold. No. And the judge is like, no, what? Weishaupt comes in Monday, and she's like, why did you put a release stop on Cody? And she's like, well, I want stipulations on his bond. And she was like, you had 18 months to stipulate this bond. He's not getting an ankle monitor. He's not doing weekly drug testing. He's not doing this, everything, you know, because they wanted to max me out with pretrial supervision to where they knew what I was, that if I even farted, they wanted to know. But she wouldn't allow it because it was wrong. You had all this time to come up with these ideas, but as soon as I actually came up with that money, you want to now stipulate it? No, it's not right. She said, listen, Mr. Boden, this is the only caveat. You have to go to treatment. I'm like, okay. So I get out and I'm like hanging out, Don't really know anybody anymore around my hometown. Don't want to talk to my friends that I do know, because before everything, we were at a 4th of July party and they thought shooting bottle rockets was funny at me. I'm not a really big firework fan if I'm not the one like really doing it, and not all the time anyways. Obviously, I mean, it's self-explanatory, right? But they thought it'd be funny to shoot bottle rockets at me. And I taught them what being on the other end of a pistol looked like, because now you just made yourself my enemy. And I regret that, because I was definitely not in the right headspace when all that went down. But at the same time, like, you go kick a wounded animal and get bit. It's kind of your fault for kicking the animal, not the animal that bit you, right? But so I learn all this stuff. I meet all these people, and I get out and I feel like a loser. I feel like I'm lonely. And I talked to my cousin, and she's like, "Oh, I had a whole bunch of Oxycontins because the VA kept sending them." I'm like, "Well," I was like, "I know I can sell these." So I call up one of my cousins, and she's like, "Yeah, I know these girls." Sets me up with my to-be baby mama, my first baby mom. And that's where I really got into drugs, where I got introduced into crushing pills, snorting them, everything right there. It's not that it was her fault. She didn't force me to do anything. I was just introduced to it. I chose to do it all. And then I started selling, because all the idiots that I dealt with, I was like, dude, you guys are dumb. Like, no wonder why you're arrested every other week and we can't get drugs from you, because you're a moron. So I thought I could do it better. And I mean, I was out painting undercover car mufflers pink. I knew, I tried to get in the watch van one time when they were across from my house. And they were watching my house, and I snuck around the back, like I got out of my backyard and I went all the way up the road. I came back down, and they were sitting in the van, and I could see through the cracks that the TVs were on so bright so they couldn't see. And the damn door was open. And I popped the door up, and I'm like, "What are you guys doing over here?" I'm high as shit. And they're like, trying to shut the cameras off to not let me see. I'm like, "You're watching my house." I was like, "You don't think I recognize the van sitting across the street from me?" I was like, "Who in your group does not know I'm a sniper?" Like, I know everybody on this road. I watch every little thing. If there is a flower pot out of place on this road, I'm not coming down it.
So what, the DA was after you that bad?
Oh yeah. Didn't know who I was. They thought, so my whole deal is I would go to Denver, I would meet my connect, get a gallon-sized bag of Oxycontin for $3, $2 a piece. I'd take them back to Grand Junction and sell them for $35 a piece. But the thing was, I didn't sell to everybody. I went and I went when I wouldn't do any of my medications. I didn't use anything but my medications. Most time I didn't run out, but if I did, I'd use the Oxycontin, obviously. But I would make myself dope sick. I would show up to the same exact dude. So not same exact dude, but I would drop the pills off to dude A. A would sell them to B, C, and D. I would go to B, C, and D like a fiend, and I'd find out which one's being watched. And then I'd just make myself hot as a junkie. So they thought I was a junkie vet. Never even thought anything about it. Move forward, me and my baby mama, Paulina ends up getting pregnant. When she has the baby, I find out me and her weren't together the whole time she was pregnant. I found out she had every drug under the moon inside of her umbilical cord. I was not very happy. I knew she was still using pain pills, but you used meth when my kid was inside of you. You used XYZ when my son, sorry about that. It's airplane mode. Gotta pick my daughter up. But they, make sure it's off. So much for airplane mode, huh? So she had been using drugs. So child services got involved right away because they knew she was a high-risk pregnancy from the opiates they were prescribing her. So they immediately tested the umbilical cord. And when they did, they found all these drugs. Now we both lost our kid, and I wasn't going to have that. He wasn't intentional. I wasn't prepared, but I was willing to step forward. Even though I wasn't in the right spot to have a kid, I wasn't. I was selling dope. I was living the life that he shouldn't have. But I would have tried to step up and be a dad. It would have been a major failure, right? So she goes to rehab a couple times. I pick her up. The judge tells me, Cody, next time you pick her up from rehab, you're losing your son. And I'm like, okay. He's like, if you can make it until November, doing good, I'll give you full custody back. She can deal with her shit, and then she can get back in his life later. Roger. Gotcha, sir. I'd quit dealing. Well, I was still dealing, but I was willing to quit dealing and all that jazz. So on October 19th of 2012, I was sitting there with my son on a what do you call it? A supervised visit. My mom had my son at the time. And I was holding him and I was rocking him and I was putting him to sleep. And then I was going to put him down and I had to leave so Pauline, his mom, could come get my son, Halo. And then Halo would go with her and I was going to come back and cook my parents' dinner. So I go about business. But when I go home, I took all the drugs, all the cash, the body armor, the guns, and I put them away. I went to the store to get 2 packs of cigarettes and 2 vanilla frappuccinos. And as I'm paying, and I still talk to this gal. I don't talk to her a lot, but she's just some random gas station clerk, right? So I'm standing there and like I look up, like I'm getting ready to pay her, and all of a sudden I hear a dog chain drop, and I see her look up, and I know it's Christensen. I know exactly what drug cop is standing behind me because he's a mountain of a human being to begin with. And he was like, "We need to talk to you, Mr. Boden." And I'm like, I'm trying to pay for stuff, like all nonchalant. And so like, I like avoided him as best I could. And I wasn't really paying attention looking through the windows. And we walk out and I was like, listen, man, I'm just trying to smoke a cigarette. And I went to put my hand in my pocket. And all of a sudden I hear all the screaming. I look up and there's a SWAT trucks. There's a sniper. There's all the drug task force. I got like 45 people surrounding this one gas station. And I was like, fuck, dude, well, I ain't got nothing on me, whatever. You know what I mean? I don't even have the phone on me. I don't have the ledger. I don't have the phone, nothing. And they're not going to find it. So, cool. We're good. So then they're like, we need to ask you some questions back at the station. I'm like, okay, whatever you say, man. So they don't cuff me. They put me in the front of the van. I'm sitting there riding there. And Christensen's driving and some dweeb's in the back. And he's got his weapon slung right around his neck, and then Christensen's M4 is just in a muzzle holder in the floor with a 30-round mag. And I was like, Christensen, what stops me from killing both of you in this van right now? And he just turns, and the other guy turns, looks at me. I was like, you guys realize I am trained to survive, escape, evade, and you guys are just acting like this is a hangout, like we're going to get sandwiches, or we're going to hang out and have a good time. I said, what is going on? He's like, as he puts his arm over the weapon and he moves it to his other side. And I was like, and I turned around and I was like, and don't wear your sling. I was like, I'm just going to beat you in the face with your own buttstock as we drive down the road. I was like, and you're going to shoot him in the back of the head on accident wearing it. So that guy's all shaking. He takes it off, he like sits there like at the low ready, and he's just like prepared, And we get to the station, and I'm sitting back, and I'm like, it's got to be drugs. So I had some of my medication on me. I remember I went to the water fountain, I took it, and I come back in, I sit down at the table, and he's like, so, Mr. Boden, what we need to talk to you about is this hit and run. Huh? What are you talking about? He says, I don't know if you've seen the news, but there was a person that was ran over downtown, and the person left the scene of the accident. He's like, you could have backed over and not even known it. I was like, well, then why am I sitting here? If I didn't know I hit somebody, it's not a hit and run. You have to have knowledge of it, right? Like, it's not making sense to me. But they're so convinced it is me. Now, they went and got my truck, but they only went on the hit and run charges. So they went and they had my truck at the gas station. They impounded it. They found blood on it. It was my dad's. But before they figured that out, they told the news. We found blood all over the truck. We found a hair under the truck. Now, do you know what an SS Silverado is? like
The truck?
2005. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mine was in 2005 SS Silverado with twin Callaway turbos and cutouts. It was not a quiet truck. The description of the vehicle that supposedly committed the crime was a dark Dodge Dakota. And I won't get into too much detail on my plea deal because of respect to the family. Like, it's tragic. They lost their mom. There was a mom and a wife that was lost in this situation. But I could prove what I did and didn't do. And most people don't understand a plea deal is not saying you're guilty of the crime. It's saying you're guilty of one of these crimes and you'd rather not do all of that time, right? But at this time, I only had one charge. So I was like, cool, fight it. I'm good. I didn't run nobody over. I know what happened. So we turn around, and 90 days later, I get an evidence report, or about 85 days later, I get an evidence report that says the blood was a 99.6 match to me. Male. Well, it's on the muffler. It was my dad's. My muffler had came loose while he was fixing it. He cut his hand, and it left blood. The hair was an unidentified canine or something, like it was, or a male or something. It wasn't anything. It was nothing tying me to this crime. Nothing that was described in the witness statements from on the scene. Nothing there tied me from my side. I just had a story from a baby mama who was not going to let me get my son back. Her dad was a convicted sex offender from California. Did not like the dude. Did not get along with him because he knew where I stood with that, and I didn't have to go to prison to feel that way about a pedophile. So he was 14 years old, and he took favor with his daughter's babysitter, who was 14, and he was an LA County sheriff. Well, California laws, you don't have to register in another state, even though you're a felon in that one. Which hopefully they change those things because it's not right. If you are this type of criminal, you should have this type of, just like an arsonist. Arsonists can't work any jobs because they can't be insured. But so I find out that her dad went up, seen her, and he told the cops this. I went up and visited with her. I came back and told you this story. Now let's go together, detectives, so my daughter can tell you this story. She was supposed to be in a rehab in a coma so she could medically get detoxed off of these drugs. She came up with this wild story that doesn't even make sense. Well, it's about as much as the newspaper told you, which that should have gave the cops the idea that there wasn't as much as she said there was. They couldn't triangulate my phone. They couldn't get ATM footage. They couldn't get nothing. And my name's not Pablo or Francisco or whatever the person was screaming outside. And again, it's tragic that this gal lost her life, but it's not the situation. The legal system is broken. They offered me a plea deal, and this is where we'll get into, obviously. So we get there, and he tells me, or they call me up to booking. I'm getting more charges 90 days in. That's when they give me 3 F3 felony distribution charges off of a 1 minute and 30-second phone call. 1 minute and 31 seconds with my ex-baby mama, Paulina. Detective calls and like, hey, is Paulina there? And she's like, yeah. He's like, hey, this is Detective so-and-so with the Grand Junction Police Department. How you doing? She's like, I'm doing good. He's like, hey, do you have time to talk? You sound really busy. She's like, no. He's like, are you sure you got time to talk? No, I'm okay. I got time to talk. He's like, hey, yeah, we found these pieces of paper. Oh, those are payo sheets and ledgers from Cody's drug dealing. Round 2. Here comes round 2 with this. I mean, the ledgers were in her handwriting. Were they mine? Absolutely. But let's be real. They were in her handwriting. They were in her. She had them. Like, you had just as much proof that she was the drug dealer. But you were so stuck on making sure I sat in prison for the hit and run. So they came and they charged me with 3 F3 felony distribution charges, and I faced 36 years each for those. The felony hit and run, the failure to remain at the scene of the accident where death occurred, it was aggravated, and that capped out at 24. It's easy math. 116 plus 24 What's that? That's 140 years. I'm facing 140 years. They won't bifurcate the trial, which means separate, right? I wasn't dealing drugs when she got hit, and she didn't get hit in the act of a drug deal, right? It doesn't work. But they didn't separate the charges.
But you didn't hit her.
No, but they wouldn't separate these charges.
Now, the first case with the assault with the kids,
that was with the kids at the bar.
They gave you time served for the jail.
I was on probation. That's
Okay.
why I was aggravated. So yeah, back that up. I was on probation and I had a deferred sentence. I had a golden ticket off the charges.
So they finally gave you a deal on that.
Yeah, they did give me a deal on that, and it was a golden deal, right? But little do you know, probation's more meant for you to fail than succeed.
Mm-hmm.
5 years on probation, I'd have never made it. No. I mean, if I would have got out and realized where I was at in life and got some mental health treatment, way different story. Way different story, right? So I go in and they offer me a 12 to 15. I take the 12 to 15 for the hit and run. They would not budge and give me a drug charge. Instead, they wouldn't do anything. And they told me, they were like, we already told the media you were guilty.
Is that because you took it because you're worried about going to trial knowing you'd be convicted on the drugs?
Oh, I'd be smoked on the drugs. I'd have been, every day of that I'd have been guilty of.
So they never found the driver to this day?
No.
There's no video. It's 2012, right?
Nope.
Where's the video? There's nothing? No track, GPS?
Nope. They didn't even ping my phone that close. Like, I was actually downtown that night, which is Grand Junction. Everybody's downtown. So that's not very much evidence. But I don't even drive that direction. I'd have no reason to be down there.
But because of the drugs, you couldn't fight it.
Couldn't fight it. And, there's other stuff in there that I didn't want about her to come out. And I honestly, I called my mom and I was like, this stuff needs to stay where it's at, Mom. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, we all have mistakes that we make. We all have bad choices. And, when she was hit, she was a very high alcohol content. Matter of fact, like after eight bags of fluid, I think she was still 2.0 or something, close to almost 3 times the legal limit. So I really honestly think what happened was she was out wandering the road, walking around, just a little too drunk, stepped into traffic. Whether or not somebody knows, I don't know. The guy that she was screaming for, Francisco, that they even reported that she screamed for in the dark Dodge Dakota, was the description of the truck. That's a lot different than a Victory Red SS. Like, my truck and that truck is nothing similar. They don't sound, they don't look, nothing. But they were so fixated on making sure I took that charge because they said I was guilty, instead of backing up and doing some police work. And that DA, he's now the head DA of that county. When I go see my mom, it is fast, man. I'm like, love you. I'm not staying too long. I don't even want to deal with this dude. I don't even want him to think I jaywalked in this town. Because I fear that, something would happen. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. But, this is like, I ran my life into the ground. I have no Jesus in my life. I have no church in my life. I have no positive support. Everybody I hang out with does drugs except for my mom and my dad. They're trying not to enable me, but they're trying to stay in my life and still be there for me. I'm fighting for my son, but I'm still getting high. He deserves better than that. And God knew that, right? The truth is, God knew that. So I got my 15-year sentence. And I walked back, I sat down. They were asking for the death penalty and all this crazy shit. Like, they were like, kill this dude. Blah. And I'm like, sorry. Like, death penalty? Come on. Like, nothing was done on purpose. I didn't do this, but like, even if somebody did, like, death penalty for an accident? Like, come on. But still, the legal system afforded me the opportunity to have a plea deal. And if more people understood how leeway that really was and how slimy it can be, they'd probably change it, because they would disagree with the fact that instead of them having to do their jobs, they got to make me look like the the cop out.
You know, it's like when you need money and you have to go get a loan and it's high interest, like
Right.
those business cash type advances.
Yeah,
the
paydays, yeah.
the merchant cash advances, they can charge whatever interest.
Right.
So you compare that to a plea deal. They know you don't want to do the prison time. You're going to plead out to whatever.
Yep.
The merchant cash advance people know that you need the money. They could charge you whatever interest.
Exactly.
They put that pressure on you.
And they don't care. And they probably didn't lose a day an hour of sleep over this.
Where are the Marines or the Army in all of this? You know, the first case, they don't send a representative.
Nothing.
You know, they're not helping you.
Nope. I was fresh out. VA could give a fuck less. They were more worried about turning my money off and, you know, separating ties. It's like, oh, you know, the VA, my lawyer got a hold of VA, got somebody to care and represent me. But they didn't care enough to step in and say, hey, like, this dude's a really good soldier. Like, he has to be going through something. He's never made these kind of choices. He's never made these kinds of decisions. Why is he doing it now? So all this happens, man. And I went back to this. I went back to the holding cell. And you know what this is like. And I just got told 15 years. Not 12. I thought I was getting 12, man. And I was like, fuck. And the deputy was like, Cody, you okay? And I was like, I'm pretty good. And she's like, why? I said, you know, I said, the only thing I can tell you is but a breath. And she's like, but a breath? I was like, you know, scripture says that time to us is one thing, but to God, it's just a breath. Years are a breath to him. This will pass. This will be over. And I'll have, you know, I'll have life on the outside. I might be 30 or, you know, 35. Like, I knew realistically I could be almost 40 years old getting out if I screwed up or caught more charges more. But I still didn't know what was coming. You know, I didn't know that I wasn't at the bottom. I didn't know I was at my worst yet. And it really took going to prison and being confronted with the politics of prison that completely contradict the politics in my heart. I don't have politics in my heart. I honestly do not care if I sit at a table with 12 black people, 12 Mexicans, and 2 white people. I don't care. But in prison, you can't do that. So, you know, I conformed to the politics. I got heart checked. I got jumped by the white gangs in Colorado. I wouldn't join them. And I rode with the woodpile, but I didn't agree. You know, it's like being a Crip or a Blood. I can't say that I like red more than black. I mean, I do wear more red, but that's now. I don't hate blue, though. Like, it's not like I get mad and I tell everybody to take all the blue stuff out of my house. So how can I represent something that I have no passion towards, right? And most white gangs, for some reason, are built off of supremacy. And let's just be honest, they're not. Most of them aren't very smart. You know, there is some smart guys in there, but like, it's not the way the real world works. I've been in the real world, and these guys have been in for 20 years, and they're like, this is how it's got to be. It's like, no, not if you're getting out. Like, you can't just go down to the gas station and tell the guy, I'm not buying gas from you. You're a different color, you know? So I got jumped by, you know, by a certain gang in Colorado. It happened once. That didn't work out for his guy. Happened to the second time they sent 2 in. That didn't work out. The third time was 3. That wasn't very fun for me. That one was a little rough. When they sent 5, it got serious. And I had to make a decision at that point to prove myself to a different person of that set. You know, I had to prove to him I was willing to kill him. And when it came down to it, he was like, hey, man, you're good. He's like, well, we'll leave you alone. It's funny because there's 2 times in my life that I've caught the nickname Hollywood. Army and prison. Never have I ever been like, hi, Ian, I'm Hollywood.
Why Hollywood?
I don't know. I was a pretty boy. My hair was always done. They said that that me and my best friend always looked like I was in an action movie in combat. And twice I got randomly called the same moniker. I had a lot of guys that called me shooter or sniper or stuff like that. I didn't really like that because it was, I'm not bragging in that kind of sense when, I don't want that type of a title because then it can be taken completely wrong, right? Especially as like a prison moniker. If you're like shooter, that's the implication that's all you do is kill, right? So I didn't really ever, I didn't embrace any of them, but Hollywood stuck. Stupidest names ever, I mean, you've heard them all. Little Smacky and, Little Good Night and all that. Just wild. Like some of them are good. Like, the guy that I met that was called Little Good Night, this dude he was tiny, but he knocked dudes out. But they called me Hollywood, and he told me, he's like, you're good, man. He's like, any yard you land on, you're good. He's like, as long as, I just told him, I was like, you're not going to call a shot on me. He's like, well, you're either with me or you're against me. I'm like, I'm not either, dude. I was like, I don't care what you're doing. I'm not going to interrupt what you're doing. I know what happens if the yard splits and a race war breaks out. I know where I'm at. I know where I'm forced to be. I pray that this never happens. But I'm willing to conform to that minimal expectation, right? Just for my safety, because the truth is the other race isn't going to protect you. So what are you going to do? Either you stick with your own or you end up getting your ass kicked by all of them, your own color and in what the opposition would be at the time. So I really concentrated on trying, I was still getting high and still doing stupid shit here and there, but I lost my visits. And when my mom couldn't come see me in prison, she drove 8 hours with my dad almost every weekend from one side of the state to the other. It was a hardship on my family. 8 hours driving just to see me and give me vending food, and they couldn't touch me. I wasn't married to him, so you can't hold hands, but like you get one hug in the beginning, one hug at the end. That's all mom gets for 8 hours of seeing you. And now she can't come see her baby. I'm the youngest of two. Now she can't come see me. My sister had to come from Arkansas. My dad had to drive my mom. And that was about it. Nobody else cared. So when I lost those visits and the ability to prove to my mom I was safe, like it really impacted me because I was like, man, here we go. Just for me to get high here and there. Not even have I had the money because I had my retirement. So I could have got high every day. I could have done all this stupid shit. But even though we had the piss cop, he was the one bringing it in. He was the one doing our pee test. They figured it out. I mean, it's probably because he got a 3-way call from the dude. So he ended up hooking up with one of the dude's girls on the outside. She told her boyfriend on the inside. I hooked up with him. And, we did this and that. And he got mad. The cop tried to set him up, right? I was walking by the cell and dude threw a ball of heroin on his floor and grabbed his radio. He was a sergeant, grabbed his radio and he was like, I need such and such shell shook down now, lock it. And he went to kick the door. Well, one of the white boys behind me, he stuck his foot in the door. Motto wasn't paying attention because he was being all cocky. So next thing you know, the dude runs in there. And because everybody knew he was a connect, so we're trying to protect him. He runs in there. He finds a knot of it was probably a little bit with a bunch of coffee or something, but it was a big ball of brown tar looking heroin. So we go into chow. 20 minutes later, he's fuming, pissed. He's mad at this dude, and we get to the front of the line, and there's the captain of the prison, there's the two lieutenants, and there's 2 sergeants, and then the other sergeant, the piss sergeant, is checking our tags. So the one that threw the knot is in there, and he's scanning bands. And I see him turn into that side of the line. I'm like, oh, I'm going this way. This is gonna get good. Like either I thought he was going to stick the dude, right? I thought he was going to take this pig out. I was like, oh man, you're clocked. Like you're done. So we get to the end and we're walking and this dude throws the knot of heroin. He's like, you forgot this in my cell, you fucking pig. And he threw it right at him. And it hit him in the chest and it rolled down. And he was so fat that like his belly stuck against the table. And it stopped and he just like looked down and the captain was standing right there. And they knew he was cooked at that point. So like they threw him and Seg. They sent dude on administrative leave to do an investigation. At that point, the piss tests that were in the fridge, they went and they looked at him. They repeat every one of us. And they caught everybody he was covering for. When dude went back to Seg, he was in ad Seg. He called his girlfriend, was the only call he made. His girlfriend three-wayed the cop, and he answered by name. And he ended up, I'm guessing he didn't even end up getting in trouble because it was a private, so he probably just got fired because they don't want the shame. Mm. But like, I lost my visits, I lost everything, and I got sent to Sterling, Colorado. Now Sterling has a kill fence. It's not just a bug zapper. You know, it doesn't just hum at you. It'll eliminate you. It has death row. Nathan Dunlap's there. That's the Chuck E. Cheese killer. The Aurora shooter had been through there recently. So it's a legit prison. And it's old. Now we're talking about a yard with more white boys, more gangs. That's where they go, right? They don't go to the minimum security yards, just hang out all cool. No, they're causing a ruckus on the high security yards. You know, they're trying to throw cops off the fourth tier. They're throwing each other off the fourth tier. You know, one of their guys, they had a guy get stabbed like something like 180 times, and they stuffed him under the bunk for like 3 days. 3 days. Because, come to find out, he was really high up inside of one of the gangs. Well, when he was in county, this child pedophile came in. Well, he did to him what the guy did to the kid. And they found out, like, wait, you're disgusting too, dude. Like, what's wrong with you? You have a charge. Like, he got caught. So he had a charge too. So him with what pull he had, he was a commander in whatever he was in, or a lieutenant. No, he was a piece of Swiss cheese. Fast. So I get sent to Sterling, and I get told I'm going to Sterling. But I don't get a chance to call my mom. I don't get a chance to call anybody. And we get there, and I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie to anybody. I was scared shitless pulling up to that prison. Didn't know what to expect. You can't see anything on the inside except for the outside. You have a fence. Everything on the inside's inside. So we get there, and I'm like, okay. They have a medium. They have a medium restricted, and then they have the high side, ad seg, and death row. Medium restricted is kind of like a minimum, but since it has a kill fence, they can't call it a minimum. Like, you get the same privileges, but you don't because there's a kill fence. They can't just trust you to walk through it and not somebody else. So I go to the high side in Sterling, and my very first day there, I'm getting introduced to the guys, and dude, he's like, hey, dude sent word and said you're a good dude. And I'm like, no more of this. We don't have to fight with my own. I don't have to have this drama and deal with everything here. But I'm getting ready to get on the handball court because that's what I love, playing handball. And I was getting ready to call next game with a couple of the Serranos. And as we're standing there, you start hearing hooping and whistling and hollering. Something's going on. So we all step back, and the guy stopped playing handball, and we all look, and through the gates comes a Northsider, a Norteño. He was in red, but that doesn't mean anything. He was just high security, right? But they were whistling at the gate because they had seen his tattoos. Now in Colorado, these style tattoos identify you as a Northsider. I'm white, so I had to deal with that too. Every Serrano I ran into was like, yo, what's up, nutty? And I'm like, no, I'm not a buster. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm white. Leave me alone. You know, they call me Pice a Dave in prison for a reason because I got so dark, you know, in the summertime. They'd be like, oh, it's Pice a Dave. All the Pices would call me Pice a Dave. But like, I always had to argue against them. I'm like, I'm not brown. I'm olive, bro. It's a different skin tone color. You know, like that's brown. This is not. Like, please don't make me prove this. You know, my last name's Boden. It's not even anything to do with, you know, gang or Hispanics. But they walked that guy down, and as soon as he got in touch, it got within distance, 13 Serenos, all bladed. This dude didn't stand a chance. The cops barely even let go of him. He died right there on the yard, dude. Right there. And I was just like, I was stuck. And all I kept thinking in my head was like, we're not in Kansas no more, Frodo. Like, you know, like Dorothy, when she gets over there, she's like, whoa, we're not in the same. No. Oh, shit, we're in prison. Like, ooh. Man, this is a lot different. Like, I've seen a dude get knocked down and shit himself. Like, no big deal. This, you may not make it home. You say the wrong thing to the wrong dude doing life. It may not be him. Maybe somebody else. And you may not even have meant to say it. You could have just been joking on the spades table or the pinochle table or gambling and took his money. And next thing you know, you're getting killed because you're getting stabbed because you upset somebody that has a life sentence. And you might have 2 years, you might have 15. So I decided to go to the TC pod, which is therapeutic community, because I knew I needed some mental health help, right? I was really struggling. If I wasn't in prison, I would suck started at Winston. I would have killed myself by this point, or I'd be dead from the crimes I was committing as far as being a drug dealer or ODing, you know. The amount of pills I was injecting at once were ridiculous. And I had to start looking at like survival, you know, like, why am I here? Why am I not dead? Why have I not died? And why am I going to live? Not that I didn't want to, but I had to understand what I was going to do to make it out of this, right? And I just set myself back because I got my visits taken away, which gets my good time taken away. I just gotten out of EdSeg and all this drama. So I go down and I get off the high side. You know, I keep myself up there. I played some spades. I didn't do much. I didn't talk to many people because there's too much politics going on. I'm not getting involved in it. I don't feel like being the topic of today's problem. And sometimes, let's just be honest, in those types of environments, some people just play games to make the shit interesting because they're bored. You know, it's not because anything other than they're bored. So they cause a bunch of drama. They start a race war. Next thing you know, people are fighting. They're not bored anymore, even though you're locked down in your cell for like a week because they're doing cell searches. But at the same time, whatever. So I went down to TC and TC is where I really realized what had happened to me throughout my life. You know, you asked me, did I grow up? You know, how I grew up. Well, when I was 11 years old, hold on. So I went in, I had my therapist, and we did games. And that's like 15, 20 of us would sit in a circle, and we all did this together. And you'd talk through a traumatic event. It was the first time I ever unpacked the story about my dad. I was playing too close to the road. My dad thought I was playing next to the highway and too close. He brought me in the house. He used me to take everything off the walls in my room. He loaded a .22 rifle, stuck the barrel in my mouth, put the finger on my trigger, and said, just go ahead and kill yourself. Dad, I'm just playing with my ball. It rolled in the ditch of the house you moved into. Like, I wasn't playing out there. I went to get it, and I didn't run for it. I wasn't being unsafe. But now you're beating me senseless and telling me to kill myself because I was next to the highway? And I was blessed because that therapist wouldn't let me talk about Iraq. She's like, Cody, I get it. You've been in war, and you've seen the worst of the worst, but I don't want to hear another war story. I want to hear before that. So I brought that up. And then she was like, what's your problem with women? I was like, I don't have a problem with women. She's like, you don't care about them. I'm like, Yeah, I do. I'm command and conquer king. I get all the tail and all this and that I want. No, no, no. And she's like, no. She's like, no, you might get what you want, but you don't keep it. And so she really hounded because she felt there was something there with my relationships that was broken inside of me, something that happened. Well, when I was 11 years old, I lost my virginity to a 17-year-old girl. Me and you, that's a badge of honor, right? Like any 11-year-old boy takes the varsity cheerleader captain and scores, he's going to think he's top dog. That was rape. And I abused every woman after that because I never respected her. I never cared about her. I never loved her. It was a physical interaction. It was a physical transaction. I had no care in the world, and I was disgusted with them. So I do the best to work on myself through prison. I graduate therapeutic community. I get accepted to a dual diagnosis halfway house. So they're saying you're a drug addict and you have some kind of traumatic event in your life that qualifies you like PTSD. So it's like a great situation of halfway houses. All these privileges, all these, therapeutic, help like classes and counseling and all this stuff, like great way to succeed. So I get out, I go there, I start doing reentry work. I'm working for a place called Second Chance Center, they're all a group of Black Muslims, and they do work for reentry. So when you get out of the federal or state prison, or jail, you come there, and if you need a job, you need a housing voucher, you need school help, doing a resume, if you need help getting on a computer, if you don't know how to use a phone, all those things, we're there. Most of us are convicts. Most of us can help you. Most of us can relate. Unfortunately for them, I was the token white guy veteran so that they could get more money out of people's pockets. So it didn't last very long. But while I was there, I went to a Bronco game and I was volunteering. And it was right around the same time that I met my wife, Katherine, that I had been diagnosed with hepatitis C. Now, Army never tested me for it. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive I know when I got it. It was not from drug use. I never shared anything. I never used anything after anybody. And people are like, how could you know that? And it's like, well, I know that. There's a difference between, I wasn't that kind of junkie. I didn't just go grab a needle out of the gutter and load it up and use a spoon from the whole, house after they get done. It's not how I did. So I know it wasn't that way. And I was one of those ones that, like, as stupid as it sounds, I was a clean freak about needles. Like, nobody around me was allowed to reuse needles. I always had fresh needles. Why? You could just go to Walgreens and get 100-pack of them for cheap. So don't, I was more worried about getting other sicknesses, than that. But the VA so I meet Katherine at a Bronco game. And this is the first time I've ever talked, like, I'm talking to a chick outside of prison, right? 5 years. 5 years I've talked to no girls.
So you did 5 years total?
Yeah, 5 years flat. So I did 5 years flat. I got out almost just like a couple days over 5 years. I get out and I go to the halfway house and I'm volunteering at this game and I'm out in the smoking section, right? And I'm standing there and there's this old guy and there's two girls in a wheelchair next to him and he's got his arms around him. And this is my God to honest truth. I was like, man, those are some nice butts, but he's probably related to one of them. So I got a chance here. I just got to figure out which one. And Kate, my wife, turns around and she is sobbing, just bawling. And I'm like, A, I don't know what to do with myself. You're gorgeous. B, you're crying. C, I just got out of prison. Well, I just did 5 years in Sterling. How you doing? You want me to give you a hug? And, so all this self-doubt, all these things are going through my brain. And all I did, we were really close. Cause in those types of environments, you're just standing normally. And I was like, can I give you a hug? Are you okay? And she's like, yeah, my grandfather, he's his memory, he thinks I'm my grandma, reminding me of this and it's making me sad, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh Lord. So I get all nervous and I'm talking to her and her best friend, Hannah. and I slapped my wife's beer out of her all over the ground like a dweeb. No idea what was going on. And, I tell her, I'm like, I get her a new one. I'm like, hey, can I have your number to make sure you get home safe? And I was dead honest. I was not trying to pull her. Like, I was genuinely like, this girl's pretty drunk. She's cool as hell. Like, I just want to make sure she makes it home safe. I never heard when she was walking up the road and she turned around and she was like, that dude's fucking hot. I thought I was friend zoned already in my mind, Me and her talked, though, for a long time while I was in the halfway house, until obviously I was ready to tell her who I was. And the fear of losing her because I was in the halfway house was a big deal to me. But, God had my back. She didn't care. And at the same time, I was diagnosed. I got a call from the VA, and they're like, hey, Cody, are you busy? And I'm like, no. They're like, are you driving? I'm like, no. They're like, can you sit down? And I'm like, no. Why do I need to sit down? Just tell me whatever you got to tell me. And she's like, okay, well, I think you should sit down. And I said, well, what is it? She's like, you have hepatitis C. And I'm like, okay, that kind of sucks. And I start thinking when and how. And she's like, that's not really important, because I did bring it up. She's like, that's not really important, Cody. We can treat it. It doesn't matter where. You take a pill one time a day for a year, and you'll be cured. Cool. So I did. Meantime, I'm getting out. I'm in the halfway house, doing just fine. I get out on parole, and since I was, associated with so many people, I did have gang coordinators. Like the gang coordinator was my parole officer, and he was like, "Why do I have this kid? He hasn't gotten in trouble once in so long." He's like, "Put this guy on somebody else's list," So I went on the ankle monitor. I threw the trash away, thought I was going to jail because they called me. They're like, why are you out of your zone? I'm like, I just took out the trash. And they're like, don't take your trash out at night. And I'm like, okay, that's easy. Because I was too far from the receiver. And, I called Kate and I was like, I think I'm going back to prison, Kate. And she's like, you're okay. And I'm like, I don't know. They called me and said I was too far and they don't believe me. I was taking the trash out. But that was the only time. Like that was the only thing they could ever pull up in my after me changing, was that. And I had started going to church, and I met Scott Boyer at a church there in Aurora, Colorado, and I went to a group called the Rhino Group, and that was disciples making disciples. So each and every one of us are responsible for sharing the word of Jesus Christ with each other and saving each other. That's what it's about. Not about judgment, but loving you no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done. You have one thing. Jesus loves you. Something Springer told me 20 years ago. Hey, Jesus loves you. Don't trip. So I ended up, me and Kate, she rode with me through everything with this. And, I got better and better jobs, ones that were more challenging that I had to get by interviews, because when they seen felony, they were like big eyeballs, but I was honest. I put my application in. I'd wait a couple days. I'd call whoever the hiring person was. I was like, hey, can I actually schedule a meeting with you in HR? I need to meet with you specifically because I'm trying to get hired for production or operations manager, somebody that's, $130,000 a year, running $50 million of equipment under their name, company credit cards, responsibilities, trucks, cars, 40, 50 employees that they're directly over supervising. So I kind of got to explain myself here. Why do I have a double rap sheet? It's explainable if you know the story. It's understandable if you know the story. So I've always been very forward about, you even realize you're talking to a felon? People are always like, what? I was like, I went to Sterling, Colorado, and they always just get this shocked look. Like, what that was like back in the day, right? Like people that didn't know you when they met you, and they're like, you're a nice guy. And you're like, yeah. And then like they find out and they get this shock bewildered look, and it's like, yeah, you thought I was a goody two-shoe, didn't you? Now you think I'm a bad boy, huh? So like I made sure that, and even in my professional relationships, they'd be bashing on felons, bashing on guys in the halfway house, bashing on. I'm like, they're not all bad, right? One of my bosses, Ed, we were actually equals. We were riding in the truck and he was complaining. He was like, "Oh, they keep hiring more and more felons around here." And I just snickered. And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Nothing." And a couple months down the road, same thing happened. And I knew I'd be in the right mood one day. That day, I wasn't in the mood to say something. And Seth, the boss that had hired both of us, had left. And Ed had said it again. I said, Ed, I said, what's funny about all this hiring felons talk? He's like, "What?" I was like, "Well, did Seth ever tell you or Tim, the owner, that I'm a felon?" And he's like, "No, for what?" And I was like, "It doesn't matter." I was like, "Ed, you've been riding around with me. We've been making money for the business the way that we're expected to. And regardless of my past, I can be who I am today without looking back at that and bragging about it or being ashamed of it. I can brag that I succeeded the bad part. I don't brag that I was tough in prison. I don't brag that I was some kind of shot caller, that I was beating ass in prison and, I had all the commissary and, I don't, I'm not, it's not like a power play card. Everybody can go to prison. You just got to be dumb enough, right? You just have to be stupid enough to commit enough crimes to go to jail. Not everybody can become a brain surgeon. Not everybody can own their own business. Not everybody can do everything. But anybody can go to jail and prison. They keep the lights on. They're just like Motel 6. They keep the lights on for you every time. And they're never going to say no. So I knew that I couldn't carry this with me the entire way. Like I couldn't have it as a weight. I had to use it as a propellant the same way I would with my addiction. I had gotten off opiates and heroin and all that stuff in prison. In 2017, I decided July 4th, 2017, I was like, this is it. I wasn't high that day, but I was like, this is the last. I will not do anything from this day forward. I do not care. I don't care if I break my arm. I don't care if I cut my hand off. I don't care if I have surgery. I'm not taking opiates. Now that will change, obviously, but you can only control so much. So I got out and I was on Suboxone because it helps me a ton. It just silences the demon. It doesn't get you high or do anything like that. But it keeps that little man in my head saying, "Get high, quiet." So I'm working and I meet Kate and I get the Hep C kicked out. Kate has 2 children from her previous marriage, and those are the most amazing kiddos. Love them. And then we have 2 more, me and her. And life changes, right? Like you go from having 2 kids half the time to 2 kids plus 2 kids full time. And they're yours. They look like you. They sound like you. They are you. And I had lost my first son, so we're hoping to get back in contact with Halo's family because my first baby mama, she passed away while I was in prison. He's with his grandma, doesn't have any family, but it's important he knows he has 4 siblings out in this world running around that love him. They know him. They count him in the family count, and they don't even know him. They just know his name and who he is to me. But they turn I'd gotten past the Hep C, everything. Like I'm working for I'm working for Keeson at the time. I'm working for $450 billion company, something like that. Not billion, a $1 billion company, which is a big landscaping company, like Brightview, all these big, large companies. And I'm a production manager. I'm high responsibility, yada, yada, yada. I'm doing great, making side money. We bought a house. Everything's good. All of a sudden, one day I wake up, I drink like anybody else. I socially drink. I'm not like drinking half a bottle of Jack Daniels every day or a gallon. But I wake up one day and I'm sitting back and I'm like, man, I couldn't even put my belt on. And I told my wife, I said, Kay, I said, babe, I think I got a UTI. She's like, you ain't got a UTI. She's like, you know how hard it is for a guy to get a UTI? I'm like, I don't know, but something's wrong here. I can't get my pants on. It hurts right here. And so, it hurt for like 4 days. And like Monday came around. We'd partied on Friday with my buddy for his birthday. Saturday was just a normal day. So we had whatever drinks or beers with whoever. Sunday, had a couple after I did yard work. Monday morning rolled around and I was like, fuck it. I need to go to the doctor if we're not working because it's raining. I go into the doctor. I'm sitting there. They do a CAT scan. They do blood scan. They do all these scans. I'm waiting. The door opens and the doctor walks in. The first thing he says, Mr. Boden, if you want to die, touch another drop of alcohol. Like, are you talking to somebody else in here? Like, I felt like a kid on intervention when they bust through like the doors and they're like, you need to quit doing drugs. I'm like, I don't drink like that. My kids have never seen me drunk. My kids have never seen me wasted. Most people, I don't act like that because of my drug use before. I can't let myself get that fucked up. I can't live in that way because if I start getting that way, I'll start staying that way. And I knew it. So I had to make a choice. He told me right there, he was like, do you know what your alcohol level is? I'm thinking like 0, but obviously he's going to tell me something. And I was like, no. I was like, I haven't had anything to drink in 13 hours. So, it's like, what could it be? And he was like, a 1.01. I was like, I did not drive here drunk. I was like, no. He's like, I didn't say you were drunk. He said, your blood alcohol content is 1.01 because your liver is just sitting there and it's full of alcohol and it will not process it. And I was like, well, okay. And he's like, you have cirrhosis of the liver. He's like, I can't diagnose you. You have to have all this testing to figure that out. But at the end of the day, we're going to figure out what you have. So they send me to specialists, and this is right before Mother's Day. Now I'm on Suboxone, all these medications, and this complicates everything because I was, in a sense, physiologically addicted to it because my liver was not processing it. So I had to go into detox so that I didn't end up dying off the opiates and alcohol because, like, withdrawing from both of those, you can end up in a really bad situation. So I was like, babe, I know you don't want me to leave you, but to make sure I don't die on the living room floor in the middle of the night, I got to go to detox. So I went to a 5-7 day detox, whatever. They medically detoxed me. I came out. I haven't looked at alcohol. I don't even care. I could go to a bar with my friends every night, and I don't care. I don't need to drink, but I just can't. And that's because I'm, stage 4 liver cirrhosis of the liver. So from that point on, we started working on getting me healthy. My MELD score, which is model for end-stage liver disease, that's a 90-day expectancy. It's a 6 to 40. 40 being you're dead, 6 being you're almost off the list or for a transplant. I was around a 32 to a 37 when I first got diagnosed. I looked like Homer Simpson. I was the color and size of Homer Simpson. Me and my wife took a vacation to Vegas, and that was the best, worst idea we've ever had. The doc was like, yeah, you can go, just don't drink. Okay, cool. I'm not going to drink. Whatever. Like, if I can give up opiates, I can quit drinking. If I can give up meth and all this stuff, I can quit. So I'm done. I got 4 kids now. I've already lost one. We're not doing this again. I'm not breaking my soul so that I can please my selfish inner being. I have a relationship with God. I'm saved through Jesus Christ at this point. I'm rebaptized. I have everything I need to succeed. And I know that because I have built every brick of this foundation one piece at a time upon my faith and upon my belief in Jesus Christ, something that is unshakable. Because I am weak, I am fragile, and I am anything else you can consider around those, where he is not. He's a firm foundation. Place yourself upon me and build. So I did. But we went to Vegas and we were walking around just, as a couple. She'd surprised me with a vacation. That's why we even had it. First vacation we were ever taken as a couple, and here I am literally dying. Doctor's like, if you have bleeding varices, you need to go to the hospital. So what that is my liver overpressures. It sends blood up through the vessels in your esophagus. They will rupture. They will rupture. And then you start bleeding out bad into your stomach, which obviously you start throwing that up, or you start the other hole and it comes out both ends. I thought we got done with dinner and I was like, I need to go to the bathroom real quick. She sits down in a slot machine. I go to the bathroom and I took a pee and I'm like, man, I feel so full. Like, why do I feel full? And like you've had a bunch of beer and like the foam feels like it's coming up more and more and more, and like you're still drinking, but you haven't had a drink. It felt like that. So I was like, man, maybe if I gag myself, like, and throw up or something, I can get this like burp out or whatever it is. And I did, and it just, the whole toilet was just red blood everywhere. And I'm like, this is what the doctor said to call an ambulance about. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. Where is the hospital at? I'm not in my hometown. I don't know where I'm at. I just know I'm on the strip. I wander out to find my wife back where she was, trying to explain to her what's going on without scaring her. We make it outside to the strip. She's on the phone with 911. And I see a cop, and he's fucking with an old black dude in a wheelchair, giving this dude a hard time. And I'm like, I need your help. And he's like, 1 second. I'm like, I need your fucking help, dude. Like, I'm dying over here. I need your help. And he's like, I told you 1 second. And at that time, like, I turned and I just exorcist red blood out again. And then finally, then this third time I took the trash can lid off because I was not trying to make a mess for everybody. I ended up throwing up again there. And then when I got in the ambulance, I threw up another 6 times in the bags that I put in so much fluid that I know for a fact, like, I was running out of blood. My wife says that I was laying there and, I said something to the effect of like, I got this, babe. I got you. And they were acting really strange towards her. They wouldn't put her in the back with me. They like pushed her in the front and like closed the door shut so she couldn't see me that well. So she's freaking out. And she said she looked back and I said, like, I got you or whatever it was. And like, I was just blue. Like, she's like, Cody, I've seen you for 10 years and never looked like that. So here she is sitting at the hospital by herself in Las Vegas, stuck on the outside, wondering if her best friend's dying. She finally gets let into me. We go through the whole shenanigans with them. They don't even get me out of bed for like 8 days. I turn into a 300-pound whale. Can't walk, can't move, can't get out of bed, swollen full of water, getting sicker. I check out and I tell him, listen, I'm leaving. I'm going back to Colorado where my docs are at. And I went back and I started working on myself. And that's when I had another rupture and I met Dr. Pudel. And he's like, listen, we got to figure out if you need a transplant or what. So this is what we got to do to get you healthy. And I was like, okay. He's like, he did some tests. We did some work on my health. And he's like, okay, your liver's not functioning. It's not going to repair. You need a transplant. I'm sending you down to Anschutz in Colorado, in Denver. All right. Well, let's go tell my best friend this. Let me go tell Kate. And I go down and I tell her, like, she already knew, possibility. And, I was scared to lose her at that time because that's not what she signed up for. Not saying she's shallow or whatever, but like, how do you expect somebody to hold their word when you met so many shitty people in your life that just, see you, dude? It ain't working out. What I wanted out of you, I'm not getting. So now that that's not it, I'm going to go move on with my life and whatever you're doing, fuck off. No. That woman is my ride or die. She does not care. She will stand there to be with me till the end because she knows that I'm that way with her too. And so we have been working ever since to get on the transplant list in Colorado, which I was finally listed on the transplant list. I believe technically May of April 2025. And my first donor came up, and it was a guy I served with, and his name was Todd Minke. And Todd has 7 kids. I have 5. He has a wife. I have a wife. That's 14 people. That's a lot of people for 2 big surgeries. So I really prayed on it, and and I'm like, Lord, what do I do? Like we had just went to a new church, Traverse Christian Church in Windsor, where I'm at, and they built this family. Like they took into me and Kate, and they have held, like, there's been times we've been falling apart because it's just hard, right? Like everything that you planned on is not happening. We plan on having a happy marriage and taking vacations and doing this and doing that, and that's not the case. We're waiting on a liver. We're waiting to find out if I can live. But I get a phone call from the Shadow Warriors, and that's the guy who started that is Mark Geist, and he's a Benghazi survivor. So he's like one of the 4 guys that they just wrote that book about and all that jazz about the operators and this and that. And that organization says, hey, look, why aren't you going to Pittsburgh? And I was like, well, I don't have any money to go to Pittsburgh. Like, you must think I'm rich. Like, I'm not. I have to go to Anschutz. They'll do the surgery, and my kids will be here, because that mattered to me most, is that my kids are with me before surgery and after. And while I'm healing in the hospital, and that's not the same thing. But before and after, I need them there. Those are my rocks. Those are my kids and my wife. I need her. Obviously, she's my support person. So she'll be there no matter what. But they said, listen, what if we fly them out and we pay for the support person? So you'll have your kids. They'll have a person to take care of them. You'll have your wife with you. Everything will work out this way. And then when you're done, they fly home. And I'm like, well, let's go to Pittsburgh then. It's the #1 transplant center in the Western Hemisphere. It is the best place. Dr. Sarsel in 1968 performed the first liver transplant in Denver, Colorado. They all freaked out and they were like, what are you doing playing God or whatever it was? So he took off back to Pittsburgh, started doing transplants in Pittsburgh, and never stopped. They have the best students. They have the best school. They have the best chances. Survival rate. And the doctor, when they were trying to talk me into going there, the doctor's like, listen, Cody, I'm a liver doctor. I do transplants. And if I had to have a liver transplant, I would come all the way here, no matter where I was at, for Dr. Humara to do the transplant. So he says the second doctor to him would be the only option he takes. So you're out of your own surgery. So that tells me a lot about who you are, or a lot about, the faith in the program. So I switch everything over. My first donor goes over there. Last year, fall, government shutdown hits. Everybody's on TikTok. Everybody's on TikTok bitching about their EBT. I'm going to do this if I don't get my food stamps. Most interesting thing I learned, the contractors that signed the contracts for my donor to get approved were laid off. So I couldn't get a liver. My donor couldn't get approved to go get the testing possible for me to get a liver. It's such a mind-shaping, like a perspective-rocking moment when it's like, you guys are whining about bread and ding-dongs and ho-hos, and I can't get a liver. I have somebody completely willing to donate, healthy A positive. It's ready. We're good. He's ready. He doesn't drink. He's been working out. This is his goal, is to donate to me. So then when it finally gets approved, he's going for his master's, and he has to start January 17th of this year. He had to start his online college. Well, they told him January 2nd and 5th were available for surgery. He's like, perfect, let's do that. One of those days. And I talked to him. I'm like, I don't care when it is, dude, because I supposedly have to go down there after they see the donor for my last checkup. But like I say, I don't care what color the damn curtains are in there. Get me down there, take the fucking liver out, and give me the new one. Like, I don't care. I have to go there for the transplant, regardless of what it looks like, regardless if I like the nurses, regardless if whatever preference may be there. My life has to be saved at that hospital no matter what. So let's get it moving. So they come back and they tell Todd, we don't think you're going to follow the healing protocols. No. A 40-year-old man in recovery for like a long time now, who's getting his master's in in like a specific psychology area. And he's not going to listen to another doctor. Thanks for the red tape. Nope, can't get a donor. Then comes my second donor. And this sucks because it's a family member. So they automatically jump to the front because they're the same, they're a match, and they're more likely to be compatible because they're related to me. But this person's had the same struggles I have. I find out that this person started using meth again and was on a bender. So I had to call in the beginning of April. Well, I had to call in mid-April and say, hey, in the beginning of this month, my donor was on meth for at least 2 weeks. So please untest them or whatever. So that leaves me now. You know, like sitting here today, I don't know if they have a selected donor. I don't know if I have a donor. I mean, I've been told by quite a few people, oh, I signed up. And I'm not saying I don't believe them, but they don't tell me anything. They're only allowed to check. They can bring like 3 people in, select one of those 3, and that one person gets moved through the process. And it's not long, it's not hard, or it's not hard, but it is long. It's got good detail to it. Because obviously they're not just going to rip somebody else's liver out and be like, screw you. But, you know, like I've had my church, I've had my pastor, I've had all my prayer, everybody's prayer in the world dumped out onto this, and it just keeps seeming to stop. But I still have faith. I know God holds my chapter. You know, the book is written. I just have to wait. I have to wait for my page, my chapter, my time. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't help get there and figure out who a donor can be. So I am now in the process of looking for, or have, you know, need to get a third donor in the pipe so that way they can process them on. I don't know if you wanted to ask anything.
Well, how long do you have to find a donor? Did they tell you?
So length of donor is kind of just person dependent, right? That night, the MELD score, the 90-day life expectancy dictates that. At one point I was a 7. Now I'm an 11. A couple months ago, I was a 15. So if that number elevates, I move up the list, and the list for deceased donors. So if there's a car accident and you're a donor, that liver goes to somebody. Well, I probably have 45 people on that list before me, and they get added daily. So the healthier I am, the further down I fall on that list. And it's also difficult because this sounds so terrible. I could go take 8,000 milligrams of Tylenol, grenade my liver, and know that that's its death sentence. Walk into the hospital, wait for it to fucking shut down, force them to give me a new liver, and I'd get one. But I've done all the work to get sober, all the work to prove I'm worth it, and all the work to show that I'm not kidding. And I can't get them to even expedite it. You know, like, where's the reward in doing this the right way if my reward is just suffering longer? I met a guy, John Morocco, that he When I met him in Pittsburgh, when I went down there, he had been 12 weeks out of surgery. This dude was like 7 foot tall. Not like he is 7 foot tall. And he was 70 years old. So he was just on the cusp of too old. And he said that he was so much like me. Like, God sends these people into your lives in these most random of times that you don't understand why. Like, I lay there and I have day-night reversal where I can't sleep because I'm like a tweaker in the middle of the night. Like, I'm like, oh, it's midnight. Let's go start a project, But it's literally my liver's functioning backwards. I'm not processing the same way. Or I have hepatic encephalopathy, which that's where ammonia gets up into my brain. And I literally lose empathy, sympathy, and I turn into a fucking dickhead. I am so black and white, so short and angry. It's not even cool. And I don't even realize I'm being that way. Like, I don't hear myself. I don't have that conscious being, like, did I just say that like that to her? When you actually accidentally have a tone with somebody you care, you're like, that sounded kind of wrong. No, I say it and then I'm like, fuck that person, whatever. I don't care what they think. So I battle with all these things that are, again, hidden, kind of like PTSD. You can't see them. You can't tell I'm as sick as I am. Nobody realizes it because they're like, well, why don't you just lay down or why don't you rest? And it's like, well, I'll do that when I'm dead. I'm not the type of person to stop moving. I live my life by get up, look up, show up. I get up out of bed, I look up at God, and I show up for the people I care. And it gets me through some of the hardest days. Have I wanted them to stop? Yes. Yes, I've wanted them to all stop. Because some days it just gets old. It's facing mortality every fucking day again. But now there's no heroics. There's no massive funeral or parade session if something happens to me. If I died today, it would just be some cirrhosis of the liver, and they automatically assume drunk. I wouldn't be the war vet. I wouldn't be the person that it would have been if I would have died at war. So it's like, it's hard, You got the regular world stressing about regular things, and you're sitting in a terminal illness, waiting for your body to get sicker. Every day I feel like I drank 60 natty ices last night, took a 1 hour nap, and got up. I always feel hungover, tired, nauseous. Sometimes it's really hard to talk. Sometimes it's really hard to comprehend. I'm really good with math. And as soon as I start losing simple math in my head, I'm like, dang it. Like I have to take a certain medication twice a day to help with my encephalopathy. But the timeline is really about me taking care of myself. Some days they feel like I could live a long time like this. Some days they doubt it. Other days there's proof that it's definitely failing. You're definitely getting worse. I put on about 30 pounds in like a week and a half. Nothing changed. All of a sudden ballooned up, couldn't get my rings off, nothing. And so I was like, man, what's going on? And they're like, we don't know. Like, obviously you're getting sicker. We can tell you that. But other than that, we don't know. They're like, change this, change that. Let's see if we can get the weight down. But it doesn't ultimately change how long until they A, get a donor, or B, a deceased. Which deceased, again, I'm too far down on that list to get selected. I think when I was when I was really sick, I think I had a 30 or 28 or 31 when I was in Colorado when I got listed. And they said I would have been 9th on the list. So 9 people had to pass away in that day and donate all their livers. It's not like that. And then tomorrow they're going to add 2 more when they do the intake interviews, or maybe they won't. But normally they add people. So the sooner the better. For me, for my kids, right? Because that's what I want to be able to. If somebody asks me like, what is it that why would you want to live? Like, well, why would I want to die? Of course, I want to be here for my sons and my daughters, because as we both know, this world is vicious. It's full of nothing but evil, selfish, satanic, disgusting things. And if they're not taught to see them as a face value and for what they really are, they're going to get turned into them or get swallowed up by them and become them, one way or the other. I don't want my daughters to have daddy issues and date fucked up dudes like me. I want them to have morals and be conservative about themselves, not politically, but a conservative, like not showing all their skin. They wear whatever, not being little hoe bags running around showing everything off. And I want my boys to treat people and women with respect and kindness, and also protect them. Like, you learn how to step in front of your sister and your mother. You don't stand behind them. You don't hide from the scary guy or the danger. You get in between it, regardless of how big or how small you are. You get in between it, and you make sure that the person, the harm, whatever it is that's going to harm them, knows that you're there to protect them, and you're there to care for them and make sure that they're safe. And if you get beat up or hurt doing that, okay, we'll figure it out. But I can't. I mean, I couldn't see. My wife could do it without me. I know that. My wife would do everything I'm saying. I just don't want her to have to do it without me. That's my best friend. And most people are not blessed to even know a love like what we got. That it doesn't matter if they crash a meteor into this marriage. It's not going to separate us. We've been through the hardest things. We've put ourselves back together individually and separately, or individually and together. And we have, again, we built our foundation upon Christ and upon our salvation and our common goals and relationship. I keep coming back to this because it's truly what has saved me and changed me, is the Holy Spirit telling me that this is wrong, Cody. You need to do this. And then when I go do what it tells me, I'm like, wow, that's weird. I get a warm and fuzzy feeling. Not I get this guilty, shouldn't be doing this feeling. And it's a lot to deal with those things.
Well, Cody, I appreciate you taking the time and coming on the show today and sharing your beautifully spoken and touching story with us. And, I don't think you've gone through everything you've gone through just to not be able to, get through this as well.
I definitely agree. I definitely will. I mean, that's the part of, my wife and I came up with one more mission, a soldier's mission, a family's hope. And that is me making it through this, right? Because we have faced some obstacles where, organizations were going to help us with house payments, and they set us back like 4 months. And I had to I almost lost my house because of an organization. How is that right? But there's so many red tapes, and you probably hear this from other situations. Like when people try to get help, they're like, "Oh, we can give you $100 or $1,000," and you're like, "What is that going to do for me? I got a $4,000 mortgage. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, rude, or ungrateful. I'm just saying, why would I take that when it's not going to fix the problem?" And they left me in a situation, and they're a big organization. They're close to here. It's T2T. They had the opportunity. They just, we have a cap. Well, you should have known that when you did the math and said you could help me in the emails, but me almost being homeless didn't matter. So, again, it's it's that mindset of making sure we make it through this, and then there'll be another one. After this, whatever we can do, we're going to do what we can do to turn this into an organization that helps veterans. We may not help a lot, but we will help the ones we can with a whole lot more than normal, if that makes sense. Because if somebody like me comes from help and they need, $40,000 in help, we're not going to limit it to the little things and helping 40,000 people with just a little bit. We want to be able to impact big places in people's lives. So that's the short answer for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Cody.
Appreciate you. Thank you.